meeting for September 15, 2021 for, do a pledge of allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We don't have any minutes to approve, so the agenda is just the budget on that, so it's the only way we have their budget, so I'd make a motion to approve the budget, or the agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the budget.
I mean, the agenda.
Huh?
The agenda, we'll approve the budget at the end, I mean, that my mistake.
It'll make it a short meeting.
Yes. Meeting adjourned.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. And also the records show that Commissioner Zander is not present. Okay, next I guess what our plan is to we'll go through the budgets, we'll have our auditor go through the budgets, the department budgets on that, and then we'll discuss the funding we've got from the federal government on that, and then we'll open it to the public then, and then after that, do the approval of the budget. Any questions before you start?
We won't approve the budget until.
Yeah, the formal budget, yeah, won't be approved until our October meeting, October 7th. Any questions? Not, we'll turn it over to our auditor, Karen Richard.
Okay, so we'll start with the governing board. The highlighted versions that you'll see, if you want to bring up, Mike, the governing board. Okay.
Not turning the sound on? Or no? I dialed in.
You're gonna have to mute your phone, whoever's on the line. Mute your phone, please.
Okay. Okay, so for the governing board, I kind of went with, after discussing with Dean, I went and used the proposed at 2% for an increase. And that's what was levied for, was the 1570718 highlighted in blue. And then also Commissioner Zander wanted his cell phone allowance added back in. And so there was a change to the cell phone allowance that increased it from 2,100, which is what we thought it would be, to 2,520.
Any questions on that, or?
So the difference in the actual spent is like there were other things taken out of there as what some of us had? I mean, because some were at 28 and Carla's at 26 and Chairman Franchik's at 26.
The actual spent is going to include things like if they had reimbursements for mileage or
You're talking about the difference in there? That's because there was an ingoing commissioner to an outgoing commissioner, so there was some payment there. That's why there's a difference in there.
for the payment.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, and then the travel is down at the bottom, and then we have the usual allowances
Yeah, I
that every
understand that
commissioner
part, but I was
gets.
just
Okay,
wondering, yeah.
yep,
Okay.
yeah, that threw me off too. And then we took, of course, we took the longevity that was on there for 2022 out, so that is no longer on there either. And then our next one is gonna be the human resource budget. Mike, you went one too far. Yep. Okay. For the human resource budget, I just used what I thought was going to be proposed in our estimated tax statements, which is $1 an hour raise. And that's where the 80,580 comes from. I didn't change any of the other numbers when we looked at them for preliminary. And any questions on human resources are welcome.
Any questions?
I actually did have a question for the board. I didn't know if the extra line items that some people have for other jobs that they do, if you wanted to include the $1 an hour, if you wanted to include the raise in that and spread it out, or if you did not want to include the raise for the extra line items. I wasn't quite sure on what the board was thinking for that.
As you mean, like for the travel and the dues and all that?
No, just down by like the risk management here, that's addition on it, or it's additional position or that they take on.
So what I did is I just added them together, and then I added the 2,080 and just did the percentage of how much that is for the risk management portion. But I didn't know if you just wanted to do the raise on the salary line, or if you wanted to do the raise overall and apportion it out between the two, because some people have two line items.
Commissioner Franchek, I believe that we should just do the raise on the salary line. I mean, the total salary.
Total salary would be spread out between the two.
So you want the 2,080 added to the 75 one?
I didn't know if you wanted, so like, for example, currently, her salary would be at, 73, 716, 78. So I could just add the 2,080 onto that. Or I can add both the salary exempt line and the salary risk management line, that is also money that she receives, and then add 2,080 onto that, and then apportion it between the two. I just didn't know if you wanted it all in one line item, because it doesn't make as big of a difference if you do $1 an hour. It does make a bigger difference if you decide to do a percentage. It really doesn't make any difference if you do the $1, but if you do the percentage, it will make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think for 2022, we can leave it as you have it in the blue in future years. If we do anything other than a flat rate per hour thing, then we can take a look at that, I guess.
Okay,
So then-
sounds good.
Just on risk management, she apparently doesn't, it's not a big time intense part of her job.
As far as I know, it's not. I guess I don't really know what risk management
I was
entails.
gonna ask you.
I really don't know.
It does with workforce safety type things there, that price though.
Isn't that
Majority.
part of HR? I mean, why are we doing a different line item for that, for a wage?
That was moved over from the auditor's position. It was actually under the auditor's office. It was it's something added to the deputy auditor, but I mean, yeah, it's part of the position. It could be eliminated too.
You could definitely combine the line items if that's something you want to do. I know they did it in the auditor's office because it was an added duty to one of the deputies there that was doing the human resources. And so they added the risk management so that she was getting compensated for the risk management portion that she was handling. But if you want to combine it all in one, I don't see an issue with that.
When she was hired, wasn't she hired as HR to do risk management? I mean, that is part of HR. So, I mean, when did the other, a line item get added on?
That was just moved over from the auditor's office. We moved it over to this department budget because that's what she does, part of that job too. That's why we just moved over, but.
The line
yeah.
item just got moved
can be
over, but we can
changed.
definitely take it
The
off.
gross salary doesn't change,
No.
whether she has one title or two titles and split into various categories. The gross salary on an annualized basis doesn't change.
Yes, it would, because that's two salaries. Or it's two, I mean,
She was hired on, I'm sorry, Commissioner Arthur, you said did you know what she was hired on at? Off the top of your head?
Commissioner Messer would
Yeah,
probably know.
something tells me it was 70,
Lisa knows,
Yeah,
I know off the top of her
74-ish.
head, because she was doing that.
Good morning, Lisa Heiser. Yes, I was part of the group doing the hiring piece of this in absence of HR. She was hired at $76,000 for the HR position. So when you look at this actual funding, it's actually split out to include that to be a total combined of 76,000.
So we're okay then, as far as, okay.
Yep.
So yeah, so
The-
if she was hired at 76, she's not getting paid any more than 76. It just split out that risk management line item between the two.
Yep, there was some confusion, I think, Commissioner Arthod, when she first came on, and then they assigned this 2,000, and then some of that just got backed out instead of adding, as though we were adding this on to the 76,000. They backed
Okay.
off the 76 and then did the 2,200
Yes.
out of there, so.
keep things clear, I guess I would put it all into one salary and.
one salary and put risk management as part of the job detail.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay, so I will make a note of that then.
Excuse me.
Okay, any other questions on that? Okay, move on to the next department and
Okay, the next department is our auditor's office. Okay, Mike's got the right screen up. And I just went with mostly $1 an hour is what I went with for raises on that. And then I did the changeover for mine to salary from hourly starting next year. And then I decreased Lynn for she might have to come in like occasionally. I know she hasn't been in for 3 weeks now, but in case we need some help with some things, she's still available. So we did give her some line item money in case she needs to help with some things. But that's where we're,
How many hours is that for Lynn then to come in weekly at this amount?
that would be like 5 hours a week.
that's only an as-needed basis.
It's an as-needed basis, yeah.
And so is the 3750 in the 2021 line, is that what you've actually spent year to date after we converted her to a consulting kind of deal?
The 3750, I'm not sure exactly where that line item
Because that
came
number's higher
from.
than that, isn't it? I mean, what she's actually done since
What
March.
we've spent year to date, well, you have to remember that she was actually coming out of the auditor line item. She was not coming out of a consulting line item. She's been coming out of the auditor salary, but now that I've moved into the auditor's line item and Lana has moved into the deputy auditor's line item, she needs to be on she needs to be not out of the auditor line item. She needs to be out of a consulting line.
We don't have a number as far as how much Lynn got last year though, or this year.
No, I would have to, I could run a payroll report and get that number for you. Are you talking about for consulting or for being the auditor? Because,
I think for the consulting part,
okay, for the consulting, I can probably figure that out just because it came out of the auditor line item.
I think what the number at least I'm looking for is since March, her resignation date as the auditor, what's the compensation been from that
Yes.
date forward? So,
And I think with to stay within the budget, I mean, so we don't go under, I mean, I think that should be moved up to 10 hours a week. Just so we don't go over. Not saying that she would ever have to come in 10 hours a week, but I don't really think
have that option and it's.
she should have that option.
Well, I discussed things with Lynn and she seemed fine with the 5 hours a week option. And then because there's some weeks I don't need her and I can use those extra hours on a week that I would need her more. Like I said, it just depends on the time of the year, but there's not, when it comes to elections and things next year, a lot of things have changed and we will all be going through election training this year. So it's not really as needed as far as where everything is at. for elections, which is what I thought I might need the most help with. But it turns out that we do have full election training, and all the equipment and stuff has changed since Lynn worked in the auditor's office.
Okay.
So,
And like you said, she hasn't been in for 3 weeks, so it's pretty limited right now.
yep. And I call her if I just have a quick question or anything like that. She's been very gracious with that. But I'm actually going to be training Lana next year, well, at the end of this year, to help me with the levies. So I will not need Lynn to be my double checker. So
Any other questions?
I do have a problem with the salary raise. I think the 2%, I think that the proposed of the 85 is quite high. I think that the 2%, I mean, I just think that 85, that more or less comes with experience. I'm not saying you're not doing a great job, but I think that is a pretty big jump in a wage with having under a year working for, for Stark County.
I have a question. When Cahig resigned, we advertised the position. What was the salary range when we advertised it?
the salary range was 85. And what it said when they bumped it down to 85 is they said that for 85 for 6 months, and then you would move into the 92.
I don't know, 92, I mean, she was here for 20-some years. I just think that this is a little bit of a big jump to me.
I think Karen stepped in and it did a deal with quite a ordeal to take on this, and I'm comfortable with that 85.
I think what it comes down to is if I am performing the job responsibilities and I'm doing all of the auditor, treasurer, and superintendent of school records as far as that goes, and I'm working with the other departments and I'm putting in the hours, I don't think I should be penalized because of the time I've been at Stark County. I do have a lot of other qualifications for the job that some other people did not, and there is a price to pay for having those educational experiences and everything as well.
I guess I don't have a huge issue with the 85. I'm looking at it as a package deal where you have to take the 85 plus the potential consulting fee, because really, if we didn't have that, so if you used Lynn at the maximum amount we're budgeting, if that's 12,500, then all of a sudden we're at 97.5. If Lynn only comes in for $2,000 or $3,000 worth of consulting during the calendar year, then the expense to the auditor is 87, 88. So that makes it palatable. But I think the question is if we go to the max, 85 plus the 12.5, that's 97.5. Is that where we need to be? And I don't know that I can answer that. So I'm okay with the 85 if we keep the consulting to a minimum.
The consulting is on a as needed basis,
Right.
and that's and Lynn was okay with that. It wasn't a long-term solution having Lynn as a consultant. That was a short-term solution. And like I said, with getting Lana in there now as my deputy auditor, she is able to help me with some of those double checking to make sure that we're getting the correct stuff out. And I think it'll be okay either way. I'm not overly concerned about it at this point. I did put 12,500 in her line just to cover if there was anything. I know we are going to have some changes next year when it comes to moving some of the lines and stuff, but that is actually going to be happening this year, not next year. So I don't foresee it. I just didn't want to completely shorthanded that line item. But that is totally up to the board. And I did bring down the overall proposed budget for the year considerably when you look at both what was spent in 2020 and what would be adopted in 2021. I still brought the auditor budget down by, 60-something thousand dollars.
Part of that was HR though, correct?
Part of that was HR, but we also had, some other changes too, like hiring somebody that was going to do both deputy auditor and payroll position. And I am taking, a pay cut compared to the previous auditor and in those circumstances.
And like I said, I appreciate that, but that was with years of experience. I mean, I just have a hard time going up that high since there was already a significant raise from when you were first hired to be the auditor.
You're talking about moving from deputy auditor to auditor? Well, a deputy auditor in past has made about 20,000 less than the auditor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I said, I mean, I don't know, I'm more for the 2022 proposed at 2% at 78,540 right now.
I guess I'd see the hours that she puts in, the overtime she puts in, the hours in there, I think I'm comfortable with that salary, but
I guess I would be uncomfortable going from 77,000 to not having overtime available to me anymore and only getting $1,000 compensated for any overtime that I'm going to be working because I'm going to be moving to salary. And that's just my input on that.
any other discussion?
Yes, I'm comfortable with it, other than the fact, like Neil was saying, depending how much we have to use Lynn, which apparently we probably won't use her a whole lot. But that's probably should be somehow compensated in this salary here. But then again, we don't want you not to call her just because it's coming out of your salary, you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
So. I do know, I mean, you would know how much overtime you put in, I have no idea, but I do think you do put a lot of overtime in. Even on weekends, you're up here and stuff, so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's the board's decision. I'm just saying that I'm not going to be okay with giving up all my overtime to move to salary for $1,000. So,
I think maybe we could meet in the middle. I would be for that, but it's the board decision.
What's that dollar amount?
for which?
Meet in the middle between 78 then and 85.
Why are you at the 2%? Because we're talking about other employees, the $1 per hour, so that'd be 79.80 there, but I guess why are you going the 2% less than the rest employees?
Oh, I guess I was just looking at 2%. No, 79.80 is fine. I just think other auditors in other counties, I've made calls and you can't compare everything. Different counties are different, but it's just a higher wage.
We did compare other counties with the wage that I'm making for the size of Stark County, and most of those other counties are in the high 80s or early 90s for the auditor treasurer position that are combined. So it's not exonerous, I should say, to put somebody at that position. I just don't want to be penalized for the fact that I have not worked in the auditor's office for 10 years, but I do have other experience and other things that I bring to the table.
Yep.
Was there any other questions?
Just one last one for the seasoned commissioners. So when typically in the past, when raises were given to department heads, or let's say specifically the auditor position, was it uniform across the department? So if you gave a dollar or you gave 2%, did that apply evenly to the auditor and everyone who works in that department? I guess the reason I ask that is I don't want to come back a year from now. If we approve it the way it's being proposed in blue, I don't want to come back a year from now and say, you know, we're treating the auditor position differently and compensate it differently than the rest of the employees. So if the answer is yes, I'm okay with this, the way it is. If the answer is no, or the auditor may, if we go to remaining as an elected position, that we navigate through those waters differently. That's my point. So,
That's, you know, it was evenly done like that, but also then when someone came in and took that position in the past, normally they got the salary that that person was getting before. And that would have been 92,000 instead of 85 here.
right. And I do remember when you advertised it was less than the current auditor was receiving for this based on experience. And so,
When I applied for the position as auditor last year, it was at 85. And I did look up the motion from the previous meeting when they decreased that by the 92 by 10%. And they said it was on a 6-month basis that it would be at 85. So I didn't feel like I was being crazy, I guess, being at the 85.
Any other comments?
I guess.
Guess we got different opinion. I guess we'll open that up to the public after we get through all these budgets. Anything else?
Okay.
go to the next one.
Guess we'll move on to planner. That's pretty much what we discussed a little bit in the preliminary. Steve just asked that he does have a little bit of an overtime line. We just put $1,000 for there. He rarely gets overtime, but he just wanted a little bit of a buffer if something came up and he had like an hour or two or, you know, throughout the month. At least he wasn't, at least it was there. That was the only real change.
You want to repeat that because I lost it someplace.
Oh, sorry. The only thing we really added to Steve's, and his proposed is at $1 an hour raise, was the overtime line. For 1,000, he had no overtime line. And occasionally, he does have a few hours of overtime, and he just wanted to have some sort of buffer in that.
I'm sure there's times that he doesn't put in enough time too, so I think that washes.
Well, that is up to the board. That's why it's,
Well,
You're right. He only works 50% for us too, as the city.
That's us, yeah.
And my point is, if you have a planning and zoning meeting that starts at 3 o'clock and it happens to go till 6 or 7 o'clock, I think that's part of the job responsibility. It's not part of overtime. But again, then we're going back to this: are you exempt or non-exempt? And so,
and Steve
by
is
federal.
hourly.
Yeah, by federal law, we're required to pay overtime.
yeah, that's right.
By federal law, we're required to pay overtime, you know, if he has to go over on a meeting or something. I know he tries to work things out with it, but, you know, tries to be flexible with it, but, you know.
So if he's paid hourly, and granted, some weeks he doesn't make his full wage then, is that what he's saying? And then the next week he works overtime, so he gets an
No.
overtime wage? Is that how that would come
He
up?
gets he works his 20 hours,
So is he working 20 hours for us, or is he working 20,
20 for each. Yeah.
so then both entities have to give him this raise then, or what?
Right, it's equally up. The city usually matches what we do on it, because in the past is what happened.
Yep, if you see his two different line items, the city has,
I saw that.
yeah, part and then.
Any other questions?
Roughly, do we know roughly how much overtime he put in the last year?
He hasn't put in for any last time. He didn't have it in his budget, so he's been just kind of gifting it. But I don't know if we can be doing that.
By law, if we have to do it, I guess.
Yeah,
I think he was more just looking, you know, a couple $100 in a year of overtime.
It's not a big dollar amount on the two lines here, but I was just curious, okay.
It was in there the year before and it was taken out last year to cut some things on there. It was cut there and we just put it back in.
Should we move on to state's attorney? So there is, on her budget, one that is open is the third assistant, because she does not have a third state's attorney currently, but she did not want to completely get rid of that line in case the workload becomes large and she has to hire another state's attorney to help with that workload. So that still is in there at 80,000 in that line item. But currently, they're okay without another state's attorney. I guess you just never know how that's gonna go. The contingency fund, I know, was for if we have to fly, the way I understood it was fly witnesses in for court or anything like that. So we can put a number there, but we never really know that amount. Hers kind of had some iffy ones. It just depends on, I guess, how much crime is going on in Stark County for the year. So, and then all of her other ones, we did have at $1 an hour. That's what I levied for, was what was in blue. And I did take the longevity out of Amanda's line item. Was there any questions for the state's attorney one?
No, I just have another question on Steve's.
Oh, okay.
So,
Sorry.
when he works at 20-hour weeks, we each pay him for 10 hours. If he works 8 hours, if he works 18 hours, we pay him, each entity pays him for 9 hours.
He's full-time, he works
Full-time,
40 hours.
40 hours,
He
20
works
hours
40 hours,
each.
20.
We actually reimburse
He's a
the
full-time
city, I
employee.
believe.
Oh, he's a full-time employee?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if he
But-
hasn't put in, he still gets the full-time wage?
He
doesn't put in-
I don't know when he's never put his time in. He's always at.
I have no idea.
He has vacation and sick and everything like every other.
Yeah, he's a full-time
Yeah,
employee,
full-time
it's just that
employee.
half the salary's matched by the city.
Yeah, I understand that part of it, I just was wondering about the workload that he carries, which might be more than what I see.
Well, you don't get, in 20 hours, I mean, that's,
That's not,
for what he does, he's, like I said, he's putting on a little more than that in the last year or so.
okay.
Bernie, did you have any questions for the state's attorney or anybody else?
but thank you for
Good?
asking.
Okay. Did you guys have any questions for the state's attorney? We're good? Okay, we'll move on to the recorder's department. There was a lot of different proposed, because Kim wanted everybody to see the different amounts, differences going from 2%, 4%, $1 an hour. What I levied for was the $1 an hour, because I kind of thought that's what the commission was leaning towards, so I wanted it to be as accurate as possible. I did $1 an hour across the board, and she didn't have too many changes, of course, with it not being COVID so much anymore. There is, some overtime changes when she has her conferences. That's when Kim usually gets overtime, is when she goes to her extra meetings or conferences. And, of course, travel, she, during 2020 actually spent, she didn't really travel anywhere like the rest of us. So she does need money budgeted for her different meetings across North Dakota for travel. Other than that, she didn't really have too many changes.
Any comment, Kim, or anything? Okay.
No.
Okay. Any questions? If there's no questions, move on to what, tax director?
Yep, our next one is tax director department. So we have Natalie and Sarah. I levied for the $1 an hour. She did have some different ones in here also. And where we are at, she also has the two separate, the GIS mapping salary line item and the department head salary line item too. So if we stay with the $1 an hour, that won't make a change, but if you do a percentage instead, then you'd have to decide if you want that all in one. And then I don't think she really had too many other changes. I know that there is more travel involved because no longer COVID, same thing. And then for overtime, it's about the same as it always has been. She had less for appraisals for this one. And then that was pretty much all she had.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay. The next one we have is for custodian in Mike Dishik's apartment. And we did have some changes for the proposed. We looked at other counties and what building maintenance supervisors make, and Mike was paid less than most of those other counties. And so we did propose a little bit higher of a raise for Mike because he does a lot more than just maintenance. And then we have Miss Warner that we got rid of the contract custodian that was costing the county about $30,000. Miss Warner is now the one doing the side of the building cleaning in lieu of that contract custodian. So she had a little bit more of a bump. She had I think we put her in at $1.50 an hour bump, but that's up to the commission. And then the other ones, Fiedler, we left at $1 an hour. And other than that, there wasn't really anything else that was changed.
Any questions?
So, on this Fiedler, or however, there's two of them for, is that the same person?
It is the same person. We're trying to get more accurate amounts for the state, for the social services. And so we want to split his out so that we can show that next year when they observe their budget, that 50% of his should be paid from the state for social services.
I'm up for that.
Yep.
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer, but I can't remember. Andy cleans the entire building or just the social services area? Mike?
His main job isn't to clean, but right now, we had some cleaning issues, but we have a contract starting this week that they will come in twice a week and clean. So 3 days a week he will be coming in. He goes in and cleans, and then the rest of the time will be on maintenance. So,
Okay. But he cleans the common areas though, not, or no?
yeah,
Okay.
he does, yeah.
Okay.
The whole building.
My point is if social services takes up 68% or 71% of that building, we
I
gotta
would-
work towards, I'm
I
okay
think we
with
have them
50.
at 66%.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be about that 66.
Yeah,
but-
so I just wanna
And
work
it's a big
towards that.
property as well.
Right.
So, it just doesn't extend on the building itself. It is the whole property, so you gotta kind of look at it that way.
And the contract, the contract with the social service building, then does that come out of the direct or indirect costs through social services,
Yes,
right?
it will. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that will. For the cleaning.
For the cleaning?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. On to the next one.
The next one was a little bit tricky because we're not sure how the mandates and everything through the state are going to go this year. I'm hoping that we don't have the issues that they had in 2020 with elections. But I did budget more closely. I mean, obviously 38,000 less, but I kind of found a spot in between what a previous election cost us and what the 2020 election cost us, and kind of went there for a budget for that, because I just don't really know if there's going to be a lot of extra mandates or anything like that we are going to have to follow.
We won't know either.
Yeah.
So that's the best I could do with that.
Any comments or questions on that? Okay.
The next one is the sheriff's department budget. I don't know if Corey had any comments that he wanted to make on that.
I do not.
Okay, so he didn't do $1 an hour across the board. He took the $1 an hour across all of his employees, and then he did the decisions on raises based on, I think, their position, correct, Corey?
Correct, we restructured a little bit, and made a few changes. One of the other, I guess, significant changes is, not all the deputies will be making the same at this, point, so the new hires will come in at 66,000, which is what they're making this year, and, the others will go up to 68,000, excuse me.
And do you have enough deputies? Are you planning on hiring anything that's gonna just affect this?
Are you offering?
I'm just asking.
No, we're hiring, two, actually have interviews tomorrow for our 2 open spots, that's it.
The little notes that I put in green, you'll see on your sheet, is where you'll see one of his deputies is going to most likely be promoted. And so I kind of made, did it show up green on your sheet?
Oh, yeah, now it does when I lifted it up.
Oh, a deputy promotion line to kind of accommodate for that change in salary. And then we also accommodated for a new hire. And so there shouldn't be any salaries added on top of this. Corey, right? We accommodated for all of them, the new hires.
I believe we got it right, yes.
How many deputies are you down?
2.
2?
You have vehicles for those 2 or no?
Yes,
They're just replacing ones going out, correct?
correct.
So when you hire a new deputy, you have to get a vehicle for him right away too, or what?
They usually have them.
Yeah, there's already existing. If we were to hire a new position today, then yeah, we'd have to purchase
I
a new
meant if
vehicle.
you're expanding,
Yes,
so that gets added, if that would be added into the cost of hiring
correct.
new people.
Now, if you look on the second page of Corey's budget, in his cars line item currently, because I wanted you guys to see what I actually levied for in blue, that was included in the general fund levy. There is that second part that is a added expenditure, but I have that on your other sheets that we're gonna be going over, where the loss of revenue calculation from Arpa funding could cover the purchase of Corey's vehicles. And so that would not have to be levied for. And so I put it at 0 in the other line item and just put it down below. But you'll see that on your contribution sheets or funding request sheet.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Okay, the next one is the law enforcement maintenance. This is for the LEC building. I put in the 2022 proposed, basically what was sent over to me by Connie and what was Stark County's share, and that is what is put into the 2022 proposed.
Any questions?
So on the, on the law enforcement maintenance, do we put the money in and give the $3,000 a month to the jail to cover the maintenance for the whole building?
Which
'Cause I know we
which
had
line
given-
item are you looking at?
What's not really on here, there's a line item on the jail.
So there's quite a few jail LEC stuff. So we have the law enforcement maintenance budget. Then we have the jail budget that is using, is it the next one? Is using our capital projects levy. which is 10 mils. And so they have all different separate things. And then we also have what we pay to the Southwest for our inmates. So we have like a lot of different amounts that we actually pay to the jail. When at the end of the year, whatever they are over budget for, Stark County pays for the jail, which you'll see that more in the contribution sheets when we get to those. But this is just what was requested just for the building maintenance itself.
So on the building maintenance, why doesn't Stark County just keep all of that and cover the whole LEC building?
Keep all of this
You know,
amount?
because we give some building maintenance every month to the jail too.
I know that we are not covering the whole of the jail. I know that we are a percentage, but
It's split up by multi-counties, isn't it?
not for the LEC maintenance, because we actually own the building.
I thought it meant for the jail part,
For the jail, that's separate. So we're talking about kind of,
and that's split up.
Kind
by
of the same
different
thing.
counties, right?
yes, that one is split up. Unfortunately, Stark County just has the largest share of the jail with 60, I think we're at 60-something% is our share for the jail. Every other county has less than 10%.
And that's based on population.
Was it based on population or was it based on inmates in and out?
Population.
It was population.
There's a separate contract for that, right?
I know that they're kind of all included, but then there's also
It's confusing,
separation.
though. It's confusing when we're looking at this and all of a sudden this comes up, this comes up, this comes up, and we really don't know how much money we're feeding into there.
Oh, I agree. It was quite tricky. I just know that the LEC building portion of it is just separated from the Southwest Multi-Area Corrections portion of it, which we will see on their 10 mil worksheet, how much they are requesting, and then we will see their additional requests on the funding request sheet too. So we do have quite a bit of jail-related things in this
That's what I'm
budget
saying, yeah.
meeting.
And it gets confusing, you know, as far as
Yeah.
what's going where.
So this is, this is the amount that they requested. I guess it's up to the board whether or not, if they want to see. I can give you guys the budget sheet that was sent over to me on where these amounts came from, if that would help.
So, and, as far as like capital improvements for 72,000, if they don't do any capital improvement, that's just there in case that something is needed, then I take it, or what do they have that for?
I'm pretty sure they had some specific capital improvements that they did. I know that on the previous budget, I know it says 0 for 2021 adopted, but that's because a mistake was made on this previous budget, and instead of putting in that amount of I think it's 72,000 over a course of so many years, is what it was budgeted for. She actually put in the full amount under heat and electricity. She put in some full amounts elsewhere, building and garage repair maintenance.
I was looking at that too, yeah.
Yeah, so that budget was a little bit messy. But previously, yes, capital improvements had been included in there. I think this year they did an elevator is their big capital improvement this year.
Any other comments or questions?
I guess that's one, maybe and maybe you, Dean, could, on capital improvements, why don't we just, instead of having a line item and putting that money in, what if they don't have that amount of capital improvements for the year? Why wouldn't that just stay with Stark County?
Yep.
And then if they needed it, then it would go to them.
I agree.
This is something that we're guessing, and they might not have any huge improvement, but yet we're still given that 72,000 anyway.
That's it.
Guess, wish Commissioner Zander here because he's on that board, so we'd know, I guess, exactly what they have planned for that.
I think the idea behind that is, if I'm not mistaken, and that's how most places are with capital improvements. You guys give something, they basically bank it, and then they're not coming to you with a huge request for a project. Because most of the projects in that building are fairly expensive.
But it's still nice to know on our end what it's being spent on then.
Well, certainly. That's why you go to those meetings.
I'm not on that meeting.
No,
You,
can
you,
sure-
you are
sure
on
go.
that.
This is what I am on, yes.
Bernie, you are on that.
That's what I am. And I still don't know what they're spending the money on.
I just guess I'd rather have them come and then it would be more transparent. We would know exactly what it's being spent on.
Yes, that was my mistake. Is Bernie, you're on that board, right? You could find out for that.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have disaster emergency services is the next one. Hers is a little bit tricky because we have to spread out the salaries to kind of between here and E911. Shauna's is 80% out of disaster emergency services. And then we have 50% for Jolynn and 70% out of here for disaster emergency services. And then the rest of their percentages are gonna come out of the next budget, which is E911. For disaster emergency services, we do levy for that. That is part of the general fund levy. And there wasn't, I don't know, anything like major. I think that, I didn't see any big changes as far as that goes. Some of the stuff is moving to like IT, which you can see the notes there. And she went with the $1 an hour across the board. And then if you look at the next one, which is E911, because those two are kind of together, both same department, we have the other percentages on this one, and these are not levied for. This comes from the revenue from, the wireless and everything like that, basically we get off of a phone tax. So it's in green because it is not levied for like that.
That's like the 50-cent landline, right?
Correct. Yep. And you'll see kind of up top, we have wireless revenue, landline, miscellaneous, different revenues that pay for that E911. Most are from the state and then the wireless, so.
I guess this is one example on the department heads, compared to what she took over compared to the previous department head, she's way under. And she didn't even ask for it, but she's way under what was paid before. I think that's something maybe we should look into.
For her benefit.
Yep.
Yep.
Something you have to bring forward then before we do the final approval then to get that taken care of.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Next we go to the informational technology.
Okay, for the IT budget, Shauna also worked with this and she is on the IT board. And we kind of are doing some updates with this. If you see stuff in red, it's because we're getting rid of those lines, and I put in green what that line would turn into potentially. If you look, I put in obviously blue, which is what was levied for, but under the RK search contract, which is what I was going to turn the Maximus contract line item to RK search contract, that's for the minutes. to be posted online and them take pictures and they're searchable online like we discussed. I did not want to levy for that, so that's where at the bottom you see additional budget items, and I put that information. And it's also going to be on your funding request sheets. So if that's approved, then it would come from that, that funding request, and then I would, of course, add it into the budget, but I didn't want to levy for it, so.
Just a quick question on that. The updates, computers and updates line. So I know we're doing a massive update on those. What's the long-term plan there? Because originally I thought we talked about 300,000, and if you took the 2020 number of approximately 70,000, and you carried that in 21 and 22 versus what's being spent, that pushes us to 360.
So
I mean, what's the long term? What's 2023 potentially look like?
it's probably gonna look the same.
At the
Because
250 or the 70?
we're trying to update, because almost all of our computers are out, So we're taking the oldest, I don't know if we went to 3 years or 4 years, and taking so many from each year and updating them to get them on a regular rotation and bring them up to date, because a lot of the programs don't even work on those older computers. And so we're just trying to bring it up, and it's been neglected for so long that now it's an expense.
And now the computers I know are going into a rotation schedule,
Okay.
and so is the equipment.
So my question is that, do you anticipate this being at that 240, 250 number
I think that's gonna be,
into,
Well, I don't think Commissioner
we're at
Marsh, it'll
some-
be quite that high because of the servers.
yes,
So
that's true. Yeah, I
the
forgot about
servers, because we were gonna do a rotation on the servers also, but there was a security risk on the servers,
so you did those immediately?
so we just did them. I mean, all
And I
servers
think
were
we
good.
eliminated, we combined some servers into one,
Yep,
but
They
this
got-
is that, but that was from this year anyway. It wouldn't be into next year's budget.
that's right.
So I think this number's gonna
244,
stay
yeah.
pretty constant.
Okay.
And I do know that, I know that number's at 258, 308, that would be something to consider to help get the levy down some, is, I looked up to verify the loss of revenue ARPA funding. And in that loss of revenue ARPA funding, IT updates and stuff are included as an eligible thing you could use that funding for. And so that includes hardware and software. So we could probably shift some of those costs for the next few years over to that
Yep.
and bring some of that levy down.
Because all of our servers are covered under the COVID money.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
The 2020 COVID money.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
In the 244 number?
Say that again?
So in 2021, excuse me, we're at 244, 755. Are you saying the majority of that came under the COVID?
That's what was adopted in 2021. No, this is that the servers were like a lot more than that. We had quite a bit of money that was set aside for specifically the servers.
300, I think, is 1,000
Okay.
of the COVID
I just
money.
remember the 300 being part of the conversation. So, okay, thank you.
And I think this 258, 308, I think that's a number in there, but we really, some of the computers, we're gonna try to push out a year and see if we can,
But we still wanna get them on a regular rotation.
Yep.
But I'm saying that would be a possibility to shift over even 100 and something thousand of that over to that lost revenue calculation. I did the lost revenue calculation just between 2019 and 2020, and it was quite a process. But it was about 6 million. So the majority of the ARPA funding that is not pledged to the academy can be part of that loss of revenue. And can be used for more things, like county road, can be used for IT updates, can be used for more stuff.
okay.
Any other questions or comments? If not, move on to County Park.
For county park, I went with the $1 an hour for Lisa. Lisa just said to, go with what you guys feel she is putting the time into. I know she puts in a lot of hours on weekends. because she's been dragging me to all her events. Lots of concessions. So we have a couple different things for her on her fair events activities line. You see 160,000, 84,000 of that is what the request is from the Rough Rider Commission. They do not, I discussed things with Lisa, and, you know, we can bring that down quite probably by about $40,000. That line item right there to bring down the general levy. I just went ahead and levied for that amount because I wasn't sure what you guys wanted to do. And you'll see that in your contribution sheet, the Rough Rider Commission. But that is one line that we could bring down by about 40,000.
Well, usually that, Ms. Heiser, isn't it usually just 80,000 a year? Why is it 160?
Lisa Heiser, County Parks Director. Commissioner Arthud, what I requested was 50,000, and I don't know because I wasn't requested from the Rough Rider Commission for the 84,000. I believe they approached, I'm not quite sure who did that.
They sent a letter.
They sent a letter to the auditor instead of through me, and so that 84,000, it just seems like every year they're asking for a little bit more and a little more, without justification of what they're doing differently, but, you know, when we were talking about that, I think there was maybe a little bit of an error in what we were levying for, so that's why we decided that that needed to come down.
From the
Yeah.
160,000?
Yes.
Yes, so the 80,000 normally, that was the amount that was given to the Rough Rider Commission, that full amount, that 80,000 in that line. 160 was basically I was accommodating for if they weren't going to be getting any of that, if she had other event activities planned, and if you guys decided to approve their full request.
Okay,
So
Okay.
that's why I said we can definitely bring that down.
okay,
It's just what you guys decide you want to approve.
okay.
So are you telling me previously, whenever 80,000 was levied, that was the amount that got forwarded to the Rough Rider Commission?
In the past, that's how it happened. We took that line item and made it, as the county parks, we made it fair event activities versus a contribution to Rough Rider Commission so that it could be used for multiple fair events, not just one, because our goal is to have a full fair out there, so.
Right, so
yep.
I think you're answering my point. My point is maybe we should have two lines there, so that because who has the discretion and the power? Is it the park board who authorizes the 80?
The park board. The park board is the one that allocates, you know, through my budget. When I do the budget justification, I typically list, these are the things, and you guys all get that in the park board with,
Right.
the
But-
inclusion of Randy and
But if you had
Jason.
X amount of dollars
Yes.
in the budget for fair event activities,
Yep.
that's at your discretion more so to go out and channel it to the various functions.
Yes, but, you know, I take my direction from the board.
Right.
And have meetings that way, and then I meet with the entities, with the Rough Rider Commission, in order to say, okay, this is what you're doing for the concert, the rodeo, the derby, whatever additional things that they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
And I think in the last 2 years that instead of just giving the money, then we ask for receipts.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's been with all of the entities. We request we reimburse them, and they
Yep.
have to prove how they've paid the money out, and that it was agreed upon with us to how they were gonna get reimbursed.
Yes,
Yep,
thanks.
you're welcome.
What's in the Lakeview Estates? What's planned with 20,000?
So the Lakeview Estates is the park out across from the county shop that hasn't had anything done to it. And so through just different ideas of what we could do potentially and to maintain that properly, because it is in pretty bad disrepair, I just allocated $20,000. I've got some grants that I will know on as of, I believe, October 31st was that grant. So I would know if we'd be able to do some things, but that would repair the property and maintain it to the standard that we need to keep it. We just didn't know it was ours. And then last year, we didn't do anything with it, so we need to do something with it very soon.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
The ones that are listed below will be ones that we will discuss in the funding request worksheet here at the end too. I just wanted you guys to have them on the actual budget sheet too, so that you knew that they were part of those budgets that we didn't levy for. Next is the county road and bridge. So as you know, there has been some changes to the county road and bridge. And those changes include, we went from 1 mil to 11.5. Does that seem right, Al? 1 to 11.5, because we had to add the 10 mil into the county road and bridge because we did away with the 10 mil fund that was before being used. So there's not, Al's is more determined by the actual tax basis than anything. His budget is more just basically what is allowed with the mills. And that's kind of how he has to build his budget. He doesn't really have requests. He really goes by what is available. And so I just put in what his 11.5 mills would be in property taxes, and then mobile home tax. Like some of those are a little bit of estimates because we don't have those completed yet for as far as like penalty and interest. You kind of have to estimate those. And that's where those numbers come from. And then the ones in green are the ones that are moving over from the 10 mil to the county road and bridge.
So what's homestead credit?
Homestead credit is something that Natalie's department deals with a lot. I think it's money from the state, but it covers like certain properties that, how does that work, Neil? Like where
It's for the elderly, so.
Elderly.
Primarily, if, it's income-based, in that we still get our tax levy, but it's. paid
From the
to us
state.
From the state.
same thing with veterans credits.
Yes.
So. Can I turn it back on after when we get to public hearing? Okay. Okay, was there any other questions on that one?
I think Karen basically was, in a nutshell, we're just combining the special road and the 10 mil in renaming it County Road and Bridge.
Correct.
When is the legacy fund funding the gas equivalents, that kick in next year, or do you know?
Not sure. I know the 10 mil is scheduled to go away in 2024.
Yeah, you have to be done with that mill. And a lot of the other counties, if you look, we're actually milling 11.5. The county road and bridge max is actually 10. And we're able to mill 11.5 through 2024 to account for the fact that 10 mil is going away. So we're not really levying anymore. They just made that to accommodate that we're losing that 1.5, which was supposed to be shifted over to that capital projects levy that the jail is using.
The one thing about it's gonna be very important, if this comes back to a vote, is to keep the 10 mil in place, because that's how we replace all our bridges and any type of projects, because basically the county road just funds to do the light maintenance, but as far as the big capital projects, replacing bridges and maybe do some paving here and there, that 10 mil fund is very important for the roads to keep upgrading the road, not just to maintain them.
The next one that we have is, oops, sorry.
I don't know where you're gonna have public input.
We're gonna have, yeah, after we go through all these, we have public input if you want to.
Okay. The next one we have is county roads unorganized, and that one we are at 18 mils. The county roads unorganized includes all of the properties in the county that are outside of the city.
Outside of the city limits?
Correct. Yep. So the rural,
Smaller cities or just Dickinson?
outside of basically all, it was
Yeah, covers all the county. Yeah.
the unorganized? The unorganized is
Yeah,
anything
small
outside of the,
cities too, right?
yeah, the small cities, just not Dickinson.
Just not Dickinson, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
If the city goes forward with this expansion of that would not affect these taxes.
No,
No, just the control of the planning and zoning.
You know, I'm looking at this, and county roads unorganized, I don't think includes the small cities. Let me go to my sheet real quick.
Doesn't include the city, no, it's outside of the small cities, I think.
Oh, yeah, outside of the small cities, yes. So it doesn't include the actual small cities.
Belfield,
Yes,
South at Richardson, Taylor.
it
that's
doesn't
not in
include
that.
those, it's the areas outside.
Got it, thank you.
So I was like, wow, that would be a really low dollar amount. But yeah, that's where that amount comes from, and that's at 18 mils.
But Karen might make note too that, you know, the county road doesn't get a full mill. Their mill is only worth 68,000 versus the other mills are what, 199 or whatever they were.
Yep.
The other mills are 203 usually. The county mill right now is at 203. Obviously, the county roads unorganized, because it doesn't include the small cities or Dickinson, is worth quite a bit. Well, it does include 68,000 would include that. What am I missing here?
Well, 1,309,299 divided by 18.1 is a $72,000 value for the mill. Does that ring a bell to you?
Well, depending on here, she has 199, 192 for a meal.
That's the old mill. That's last year's.
And I think that's for the whole county.
And that's for the whole county, and that's last year's, yep. So the road unorganized, if I'm looking right here. 18 mils is worth that 1309, and so it's at 69, and the value of Dickinson is at the 100 and, let me go to here real
130.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, 130. So that would be about right. So that would include the
Okay,
outside the small cities.
thank you.
Okay, our next one is highway distribution. What is in blue is what we levied for. But of course, you have your revenues from the highway tax distribution from the state and miscellaneous. And so we only levied for what was left over. And we did levy for the $1 an hour raise is what we put in there.
Any questions or comments? Al, you got something to add? Or?
Well, one thing, you know, the wage comes at highway distribution, all our benefits, and that's from gas tax and in motor vehicle license tax. That's where wages come from. And then you'll see in the line item where in county road, we're transferring out of there to actually balance the budget for 2022 coming on highway distribution. And that highway distribution varies a lot depending on how much activity, how much gas and stuff is sold. So that it's kind of a wild card, but it's usually pretty sufficient to operate off of.
I do know that the oil and gas revenue for the 2020 year was actually over $1 million less than for 2019. So that did affect,
I'm sure there wasn't much travel for,
right?
I mean, not really for a year.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on and
We end up in a negative 16,000, is that what that is?
No, so once you guys do, that's just the longevity total.
Okay.
Once you guys do your approval, there'll be a line of approved. The next one is capital improvements. We are not levying anything for capital improvements, obviously. That's where usually that oil and gas revenue and stuff comes in from. we have our contributions in there. So the Southwest Multi-Corrections, that's where we usually take that 400,000 from. And then we have, of course, social service building. We did 60,000 for capital improvements because there's probably going to be some done out of there for, I can't remember what Mike said for the social service building, 60,000. That's their regular amount that they do, correct? Or roughly what you thought if needed. Okay, so none of these amounts were actually levied for. This is just estimates on expenses out of the capital improvements.
Any questions or comments?
So, on the social services building, which is our building, we're responsible for pretty much for everything over there all the time, or what?
Ours is owned by the county.
Yep, the county owns the building.
Right.
As far as the conversations I've had, the county is, since we are the largest county and we are the central county, the largest in the central for the Southwest area, we do have to provide a building for them. And so,
Free of cost.
well, no, they pay insurance and their share of utilities and everything, but they just don't pay anything as far as an amount for that
I
building.
knew that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next one is kind of, I know the one that you said that was a little bit controversial, which was the county jail. So that one right now, we levy 10 mills for our county jail, and they are using the capital projects levy, which is not actually a county jail levy, it's a capital projects levy, just so everybody is aware, because that capital projects levy is not available for any more levies without a vote. 10 is the max. So that's where that amount comes from with the 10.
And with this amount, we still have to compensate at the end of the year?
Yes. So Sunrise Youth Bureau gets 1 mil of that 10. So you'll see that 203,860 kind of towards the bottom. And then, of course, we have basically what we pay for our prisoners, and whatever they're short, I think, is basically what the county has to pay at the end of the year.
And that's all been predetermined and dictated by previous agreements that we've entered with those boards and stuff, correct?
That's the way I understand it. I don't know, Corey, maybe you know more about this.
If you have a specific question, I'd be happy to answer it. But basically, everything is split up between those counties by population. So even the one that Bernie was asking about earlier, I'm assuming they're all paying that same set of things, like capital improvement, they all kick in a certain amount.
Not for the LEC building.
No? From the other counties? You're positive?
Well, that's according to my budget. We have the percentage that is the county, and then we have the percentage that, well, they would be Southwest Multi-Corrections pays a percentage.
Right, they're not paying to the LEC building, but they're paying towards the jail
For the
section.
jail, yeah.
Yes, that's my point. That's what the county's, the group is for, that jail portion. As far as this, yeah, I guess I don't know the specific line items on here, but I would assume it's all split up evenly. And Neil, or one of you guys made the comment about prisoners, that's a separate. So when you put somebody in jail, you pay the $125 per person you bring in there per day. If you take them to court, that's an extra. I mean, there's all sorts of little hidden costs when you put somebody in jail, but that has nothing to do with that final number at the end of the year. That all goes towards that, obviously, but whatever they're short, then the counties are responsible for splitting up according to population.
So when they get a fine for something, does that go back against us?
No,
Fines go to the state.
yeah. That all goes to the district court, clerk of court.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll move to the emergency, right?
Yep, we didn't mill anything for, this is just the county emergency fund. We obviously didn't mill anything for that, and there's not much to share on that because there's nothing really there. The next one is the,
What
oops,
does
sorry.
it, what does it do?
Well, normally you can mill for an emergency fund, but because we have extra revenue in our special projects, if there was an emergency, you could pull from that as opposed to milling
This is
anything.
just, if there's like an emergency in the county, like a natural disaster, or what does this go for?
I think the way I understood it, it was more one of those like, let's say the water main in the courthouse breaks. Like just a big cost that was never accounted for. Okay, our next one is the Veteran Service Department. It's not levied for because there is funds in there available. That was where we talked about the last time with Jessica potentially getting the extra compensation based on the other counties, Billings, Hettinger, and Grant. So we did add an extra line item for $9,000. That's $3,000 per county, and that is contingent on those counties staying with Stark. If, for example, one of the counties decided, like Billings County decided that they were no longer using Jessica's services, then she would lose $3,000 of that $9,000 out of that line item. And then the other things were just, basic. There wasn't anything significant changed in any of her other line items.
So right now, Billings, Hettinger, and Grant each pay $13,000 a year for their services?
Grant pays 10, the other two pay 13.
Yep, so the county gets $36,000 a year for Jessica doing their
Or
veteran
they pay
services.
the county?
They pay us, yes. They don't pay Jessica,
Okay.
no.
And in return, she wants 9,000.
25% of what the income we get from that.
Yep, and then if one of those counties decided to,
Okay.
it would come out of that.
Well, those counties pay us, the way I understand, those counties pay us because then when Jessica's working for them, then it's not the Stark County residents paying for that time.
Right. And that's why they pay us for it. And
Yep.
then
Yep.
we would be turning around and paying her to go.
But in her wage, we already pay her to go to those counties. So that's what I'm kind of a little bit confused on.
As far as I know, there was never any extra compensation for the counties over the last, how many years of them doing the extra work for those counties. Hi, Jess.
Hi, I'm Jessica Clifton, the Veteran Service Officer. Just for clarification, I was hired as the Stark County Veteran Service Officer. For the last 10 years, we've picked up the rural county contracts so I can go provide those services to the rural counties. So those joint powers agreements are for Stark County to provide their veteran services. So they're within the North Dakota Century Code rules. They have to provide a veteran service officer. So for the last 10 years, I have been providing those services for those counties. So supervising those counties or overseeing those counties' veteran service officers. For me, for clarification, if I was supervising or providing those services, Stark County has not compensated me for those services.
But Stark County has been compensated for those services.
As the Stark County Veteran Service Officer. So,
No, but Stark County has been compensated, but you have not been compensated back.
correct.
Well, that's because those counties pay So Stark County doesn't actually have to pay for when you're working for those counties. I mean, that's where that money.
So I'm the
that's where
Stark County Veteran Service Officer, so I could cancel those contracts. Because it's 3 counties I'm doing the work for. I could cancel those counties' contracts as the Stark County Veteran Service Officer. I don't need to renew them. However, I don't want Stark County to lose that $36,000 revenue that we're bringing in. And those veterans are going to continue to come to me anyway because I've started with them for the past 10 years. They're not going to quit coming here.
You're comfortable that, as we potentially have these counties or take on potentially
More.
other counties, that there'd be no reduction in services to our county's veterans?
Correct, yeah. I do spend a lot of evenings or weekends traveling to the counties to make sure or meet veterans when they're available. Farmers and ranchers like to meet on weekends or rainy days or nights. Again, it's just a proposed, it's up to the board for their decision, but as I've been listening to budgets through the years and I've seen other departments get compensated for additional job duties or supervising roles of other departments, it kind of made sense to me that I'm the Stark County Veteran Service Officer, and that's what my salary reflects.
And I think that's why we discussed doing a separate line item so that it was
Correct.
tied directly
Yeah.
to those services.
I did used to cover Dunn County, but we have agreed to train and get Dunn County Veteran Service Officer trained and gave them their county back.
Anybody else have any other
I
questions?
guess with Grant, wouldn't that be easier if does anybody in Bismarck or the North Dakota Veterans Service take over so that, because that county is so far away?
So they're
I
a
guess-
bordering county, and there's nothing in the North Dakota Century Code that says they have to be a bordering county. Most of the Grant County veterans do come to Dickinson to the VA clinic for their veterans health care or shopping for Walmart. They did advertise for that job once the last veteran service officer resigned. They had no qualified applicants that they felt comfortable hiring. It's more cost efficient for them to contract with a different county due to they don't have to pay benefits or travel. I'm nationally accredited. I'm state certified. I national certification through the other veteran service organizations. I'm available by phone, email, or fax 40 hours a week, if not more. So for them, it made sense for them that they don't have to go back and re-advertise this job every year or 2 years. So it's been working very well for Grant County.
Okay. But on the weekends, you do claim overtime, or you do make sure?
Nope. So if I'm traveling to Bismarck, I'll stop in Grant County and see a veteran on my personal time, just because it's more convenient for the veteran, and I'm trying to be more available for the veterans. So I have not charged our county overtime.
Jess, you've been kind of flexing your time, haven't you? Like
I
if you
try,
think
but
that
I
you-
need to be here in my office mostly 40 hours a week.
So you have to be here, how do you get to billing, like on the
So,
aren't you supposed to be in
Tuesday,
Billings
I
and-
was in Grant County.
Okay,
I had 12 veterans scheduled for Grant County on Tuesday, so I compile a list of veterans when they need to see. For federal government, your paperwork needs to be turned in by end of month to save the effective date. Billings County veterans, I have gone to Freiburg or Fairfield?
Freiburg or Fair, both,
One of them.
yep.
Well, one north. I've met some veterans up there. Most Billings County veterans that I have conversation with, I ask them, would you like me to come to the courthouse in Medora? And they're like, well, I have to come to town next week to buy feed, or so we just schedule it as it's convenient for them. Same with Hettinger County veterans. I do go there, but I usually end up in New England and then Mott, then Elgin, then Carson, and then back up this way. So I make a loop.
Okay. Could it be a liability issue for Stark County that you I mean, why don't you claim overtime instead of doing it on your own time?
Because I just want to help the veterans. And if it's convenient for me while I'm traveling to South Dakota for a weekend on Friday at 3 o'clock, I can stop in New England and have a veteran sign some forms. That takes literally 15 seconds. I don't feel that's
Okay.
feasible to charge overtime when I'm on my way to a personal thing anyway.
Just call a dedicated employee.
Again, it's just a proposed, it's the board's decision. I'm gonna keep doing my job.
Heading, you go there once a month or twice a month or what?
It just depends on the veteran's needs. Sometimes it's been 3 times a month, sometimes it's once a month. Some months I don't go to Hettinger because they're coming here. I've let the commissioners know of each of those counties. I'm not gonna come and sit 1 day a week in the courthouse and have no clients come to see me. It's not cost effective for me or for my time. So we just make a schedule, and when I do have veterans, if it's an emergency and they need to see me, of course I'll go the same week.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Yep.
Next, we'll go into the.
Okay, the next one we had was county agent. He did have some changes. Kurt requested that the girls get $2 an hour raise instead of the $1 an hour raised, which is, this is not levied for because they're using past funds that are available. The only thing I will say is that with Michaela, her being split between weed and county agent, weed is only planning on doing $1 an hour. County agent is requesting $2 an hour, so she will have a little bit of a variance with that. I don't know what the board wants to do as far as that goes. Other than that, there wasn't anything significant. There really wasn't anything significantly different about the budget. I do know that they have an increase in cell phone allowances because previously Michaela and Dixie did not get cell phone allowances, but they do now.
So you said there was a $2 an hour raise, but it says proposed $1 per hour.
Where does it?
Under 2022, proposed $1 an hour?
Oh,
Yeah, go to the green one.
Oh,
it's kind of green.
oh,
Maybe we're running out of green ink. But yeah, the proposed and stuff in that is actually, that's $2. And then I know that the proposed for Kurt himself is based on what the state, or is it the Extension Center? I get a little bit confused by that. The Extension Center, so the state, what they decided as far as
he's
raises.
paid by us.
I think we're like 50-50, aren't we?
It's partial.
Yeah, it's like 50-50
Oh, between
is the way.
buildings and stuff.
Like they pay him and then we reimburse it, I think is how it goes.
Well, NDSU is the
Yeah,
funding
he's-
source, yeah.
Yeah, they pay him and then we reimburse them.
Not all of it, though.
Not all of it, the amount that's in the box.
Yeah.
50.
Yeah,
It's 39.
it's about 50%, I would say.
Yeah, 39,927, you're talking.
Yep.
I think we're trying to stay within a range, and I don't think we need to go step up to the $2 range.
I agree.
I think $1. I mean, we're trying to be consistent, I know we've drifted a little bit, but I want to stay as consistent as we can be with these things.
I agree.
I think the problem with the $2 an hour, I think that came in because even though they said there was no raises approved last year, the approved budget for Kurt actually had Michaela and Dixie getting $1 an hour raise
Last year?
For 20,
for 2021.
21, yeah.
And they did not get that $1 an hour raise. So I think that's where the 2 comes from.
I guess I'm comfortable with $1, but I'm not comfortable with 2.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Everybody good? Okay, the next one we have is weed control. So what we levied for, I did have a meeting with the weed control board to talk about their budget because they were running in the red. And so I had a meeting with them and we kind of went over things. They are reducing the cost share amount for chemical to kind of help with that a little bit. They also, you know, for, where was this other part here? We are going to help the weed department out, we are going to transfer over the costs of retirement, health, and Social Security and Medicare over to the general to cover that for their employees. And then, because right now they really are running in the red every year, and I know that they're at their max 4 mills. We can't do any more than 4 mills. So the difference has to come from the general fund. We also levied for $30,000 to go into weed to help get them back in the green. And then if they want a side-by-side equipment, that's at the bottom for additional budget items, $50,000. That would have to come in the funding requests list that we'll go over after these budgets. And the weed board went with $1 an hour.
Any questions or comments?
Yes. I haven't studied this enough to understand why they're going in the red every time.
They're going in the red because previously we had contracts with Dickinson and Billings County, and we no longer have those revenues, and then they weren't getting the county sprayed. So we no longer have those contracts, so there's no revenue coming from Dickinson or Billings County. And so it's all on that 4 mills as far as the county's share to just spray the county. There's been different proposals. I did say that, you know, during the slowest time, if Travis wanted to help with elections or anything like that, we can shift some of his salary cost into the elections budget. So there is some options there. But as far as where it's at now, I mean, the board will have to make those decisions.
What's the reduction in revenue? Just stop, again, get close. What was the city contract worth and what was the buildings contract worth annualized prior to 2020?
Well, I will say, I guess, on the reduction that you're seeing in revenue is from the county road. So before we would transfer anything that they were under from the county road to the weed department. And you're really not supposed to be doing that. Anything that they need is supposed to be coming out of the general fund.
I get that.
Oh,
What was
sorry.
the revenue reimbursement?
From the city was 50,000, I believe is what we got from the city.
It was 50,000.
Yep.
Okay.
And
We
70,000 from the road department, we usually transferred.
Yep.
If they needed that amount, but
Okay.
apparently we can't do that no more.
Yeah. And what was, off the top of your head, Billings County?
I don't remember we did.
I don't believe we ever done anything with
Oh,
Billings
okay.
Oh,
County
I meant Dunn County, I'm sorry.
oh.
or,
okay.
or Dunn County.
At one time, they did have stuff with Dunn County.
That's because their director both worked for Dunn County and Stark County.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you.
Mike, does, on the off time then, does Travis help you out?
In the winter, yes.
In the winter time?
He also-
Sure.
Yeah, in the morning, we usually, we will take care of the snow and ice together. And now
Okay.
that we have the big office building,
Yep.
it will be all 3 of us.
Okay.
We'll come here, move, go up there, help. Sidewalks, ice melt, all that kind of stuff,
Okay.
so.
So he pretty much works for you.
I would
or
say
the-
an hour or 2 at least minimum a day if we have a bad winter. You know, if we get a flurries every night. If we had a dry like last winter, it wasn't much because we just didn't have any snow.
Yeah.
But anything I do need, I call him in the wintertime. He comes help. So, I mean, we could keep track of that on an hourly basis, if
Okay.
you guys
Yeah,
would
that
wanna
would-
do something
yeah.
like that.
You said 1 to 2 hours a day?
Depending, you know,
Okay.
if we got 6
With
inches
the
of snow,
snow,
we're looking
sure.
at 4 hours.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
yeah, it's just kinda up in the air, but I try to use them as much as I can in the winter for help.
Okay.
And we can try to shift some of, like I said, the election, if he wanted to help with some of the election stuff. I know he has in the past. We can shift some of his salary over to that too.
Yeah, in the past, he has helped me move all the equipment, set up with all the equipment, so.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then our last one here is the victim witness. So I did not levy for it because I'm hoping that the grant gets approved that she put in for. And basically, I think the biggest changes to her budget was going to salary as opposed to hourly, just because she does have a lot of time on weekends and everything dealing with victims. That would be more accountable as far as that goes, and she has had a lot of overtime with her grant stuff. I do know that she's looking to bring on an assistant to start helping with some of that paperwork as far as that goes. So I don't think she would have as much overtime if she had an assistant, but she would be moving to salary, I suppose, and then she would have zero at overtime because she wouldn't have that line item anymore.
The assistant is subject to getting the grant.
Correct. So we're waiting to see. I put the amounts in there, and that's why you see it's kind of tinted green. I know Bernice is only tinted. In the proposed line items would be her going over to salary and then hiring a part-time person, but that is, contingent on what we get for grant money. When she put in the grant, she did put in a request for money for an assistant.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Not, then we'll then you want to go over the request for the funding for our ARPA funds?
So Mike, you'll have to go back to the beginning. So for the request, I don't know where we want to start. Do we want to start with what was levied for and what was not levied for?
Let's start with the funding with our county request.
Okay, so the funding for the county request. I'm making sure Mike's on the right page here. Did it not go on there? Well, gosh darn it. Okay, well, we'll just go over the funding. If you took a handout, it'll be on there. We're gonna start with the 2022 funding county requests. These are requests that were not levied for. They are listed at the bottom of certain departments' budgets. On certain departments' budgets that were not, like I said, were not levied for. And so these are requests that we could potentially use some of the other funding options for, where we do not have to charge anything to a taxpayer to pay for. So we have like the sheriff department needing 3 cars, and so let's talk about the ARPA funding real quick, because that's going to be very relevant to these. The ARPA funding, $2 million is currently pledged to the academy, like we spoke about.
What does ARPA stand for?
ARPA is that American Rescue Plan Act funding. So the county itself, we got $3,058,184.50 deposited here, and then next year we'll get the same amount in about June or July is what they're looking at. So about $6,100,000 in that range is about the total. And like I said, $2 million of that is pledged to the academy. So that leaves about $4 million for other things.
The academy, is it like a police academy type
No.
thing?
No,
You're talking about
The career
Career Academy.
the Career
Oh, okay,
Academy.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, well, you know,
Yeah.
if I don't understand it, whoever's listening probably doesn't understand.
Yeah.
it either.
Yeah.
Yep, so sorry
So
about
even if I
that.
understand it, I'm asking it.
Yep, the Korean Technical
great.
Academy. So what I had to do is, so the strings attached to that are very tight as far as what you can and cannot use the funding for. But they said you could do a loss of revenue calculation, and I did the loss of revenue calculation. It's for all things, and between 2019 and 2020, overall, with the state funding and everything, the county had a loss of revenue about $6 million. So basically, the rest of the ARPA funding available can be included in that loss of revenue calculation, which opens up that funding being able to use for other things like county roads, our health services. They had any emergency services on there, sheriff's department. They had also, IT. So computer updates, that's where I was talking about with the computer updates and such. Those are the kind of things that we can use the loss of revenue calculation for, as opposed to the very small amount of things that we can use it for if it had to qualify.
Okay.
So keep that in mind as we're going through. So what I propose in this funding counting request, Sheriff's Department, they are going to need 3 more cars next year. So when I put the fund number on here, you'll see that sheriff, that's their cars fund line number, but I have transfer from the 2021 ARPA and that number there because I wanted it to be very clear that it would be going from the ARPA fund line to the cars so that we have a better way to track those purchases. So 3 cars for the sheriff's department, and then that's $150,000, and then my department is requesting that we do the online minutes, and that's where we have a company come in, take a picture of all our minutes, so like about 100 years worth, and post them online in an archive where you just click and you're able to search different keywords. And people basically we would not have to be looking through books when anybody asks anything about a motion, or you can search it right online. And I know if it works out well, we were also looking at doing the zoning changes and ordinances. So that's the cost for that. I put the weed control for the side-by-side in there because they were looking at getting another side-by-side for the weed department. And so that would be $50,000. And then below it, if you go to county park, you'll see 2021 ARPA. These are things that actually met the guidelines without using loss of revenue calculation. So the restroom facility meets those guidelines at $230,000, and strangely enough, the portable bleachers meets the guidelines at $62,000, and those are for the motorsport park.
Bleachers are,
The bleachers, the portable bleachers,
but the restrooms are for the.
are for the main, the fairgrounds. Yep. And so those actually meet the guidelines for ARPA and would not have to come out of the loss of revenue calculation. And then down below, these are items that are more special projects, more capital improvement things. And that's where I put the electrical pedestals, the fair and motorsport signage, and the chain link fence needed in the motorsport, because all of those could come out of the special projects fund with the county and doesn't need to come from any of the ARPA funding, because those are like improvements
What
on
about
things.
electrical pedestals?
So currently they have electrical pedestals out there, but they need a couple more. And they also need to move some because when people back in their trailer,
Oh,
they're
okay.
damaging
Yep.
them.
Okay, yep.
Yep.
I've seen pictures.
And so that's kind of where that comes from. And then also the fair and motorsports signage. We currently don't really have any signage for the fairgrounds or the motorsports park. And these were all things that if you got that packet from Lisa, that she sent out, these were all things that she went into great detail on what it would be from. So was there any questions on the county requests?
Karen, does this consume, I'm sorry, Neil.
No, I'll defer. Go ahead.
Appreciate that. Does this consume most of the funding for 2021?
As far,
For the COVID funding?
no, not at all.
Okay. I just, if you want to reference the request that we'll probably have for body cameras next month.
And I already, once I did that calculation for our loss of revenue, I already kind of thought about that's something that we could include with that. Because you said about 400,000, correct?
Better get that request in soon before they do the final.
Yeah, Jesse was supposed to present this month, but the quotes didn't come in on time, so he will be here at the next meeting.
And it's about 400?
It's gonna be shy of that, but yes.
Is it similar to the ones PD has now?
It may be, well, we're gonna have two quotes, and I believe the other quote will be cheaper than what the PD has. And, personally, I prefer that one, but I'm not gonna mandate a body camera that I'm probably not gonna be wearing to my department, but, the one that I prefer is the only one that's endorsed by the NAACP, so maybe that's important, I don't know.
All right.
So I know there are a lot of other projects and we have a lot of other requests that have informally been talked about. And so, and then we have these requests that come in, for example, from the sheriff's department. And so I don't know if we're just reviewing this or if we're making some decisions, but I think we have to look at the entire package of requests and prioritize and see where we're going, because I'm just doing calculations based on informal requests, and I'm already in my mind over 6 million, and so I want to make sure when we spend funds that are ARPA related that we understand that it's a one-time, one-shot deal. We're not doing some continued things, and priority has to come to county projects, and that's where I'm at. So.
And so when I made these lists, I went back in the minutes and everything, all the everything that's basically came up, and made sure that I didn't forget anything. I just wanted everybody to be aware of everything that's being requested, so you could kind of decide what you are or are not willing to fund.
Yeah. And I know what we're gonna flip over to the other entities, but the shooting range training complex has come before us. The athletic complex up at DSU has come before us. I had 6, the library you have on here. So I just, that's my thing, is let's focus on county prioritized projects, because we're gonna easily get through the roof of that 6.1
Well, those
million.
projects there, they haven't come up with any numbers yet. That's why she didn't list.
Great,
them.
and I get it, I appreciate it, but,
Yep, the only ones I listed are the ones that came with actual numbers.
got it.
And then as far as the requests go, if you filled all these county requests, for example, for the 2022, I think you're what, at about 500,000, 600,000. I think maybe the best way to look at that, Neil, is only go by with what we have available now, and don't necessarily include what's going to be coming next year in June or July. So just go by with what's 2.1 million now, is what we have in the account that isn't already pledged. And then if we go on to the next page, we have funding other entity requests, and let me see that. Yep, that should be that one. Yep. Okay, so these requests were the ones that I kind of went back in the minutes to see what was asked for, where we're at, and then I kind of just put where they could potentially be funded from, whether it meets the ARPA guidelines or the loss of revenue guidelines. Obviously, we don't want to levy any more tax dollars, so this just kind of gives you an idea of what people were asking for. I guess if you have any questions, I think they're pretty I mean, I think the number one thing for Able, I actually did get a sheet that I will send out. They kind of numbered their biggest priority things. And I do know that they're finishing their adult changing station bathroom was their number one priority. So I kind of put that towards the top. We will have to more than likely cover the elder care additional meals for $54,000. I did make a mistake with the levy. I did not realize that both elder care and Southwest District Health levied under that same senior mill levy. And so I shorted them about 0.08 of a levy. And they actually had some additional costs in there too. So that's kind of just the difference of where we would need to cover. And I know that those meals would be covered under the guidelines because of the COVID.
So that adult station, changing station is $200,000, $180,000.
It's a lot more than that. That's what the difference is that's left. It was almost, I think it was about 400,000.
Wow. And the Southwest Correction Center Community Treatment Program is what?
That's the one where they would be releasing, as far as I knew, instead of having people go to jail and sit there waiting for trial, the ones that are qualify would basically be out monitored. And we wouldn't be paying for them to sit in jail, and they would continue their job in their own housing.
That's a program that our state's attorney talked about here.
Yeah, I
a couple
remember
weeks
her
ago.
talking about it. I was just wondering what the difference is in cost of keeping them in jail, but I guess that's probably higher than $165,000.
That program though hasn't even started or even, I mean,
Right.
hasn't he really even got up?
This was just the list of requests.
Okay,
So that was included in the Southwest Corrections Center requests, along with the body scanner and the medical and correctional officer wages.
So our commitment to the Career Tech Academy of 2 million, easy for me to say, 2 million will be spent prior to the end of 2022.
Yes, so 1 million will come out of the amount dispersed this year, which was 3,058,184. 1 million comes from that, and then 1 million will come out of that same amount next year.
Oh, okay, of that 3,058.
Yep. Say that again?
wasn't it 1.5?
Well, actually, you have to put both the amounts together because it was 500 in May and then 500 here this past commission meeting, 2 commission meetings ago, and then 1 million next year. So altogether, it's 2. That's the way I understood it. Am I incorrect on that?
I believe it's 1.5. You might want to check on that. I thought it was 1.5.
No, because we already gave them 5, and we're still supposed
Holding
give them-
on to the
We're
5.
still supposed to give 1.5.
Yeah.
On top
So
of the
it's
5
2
that we gave them,
altogether.
it was 2 to begin with. We gave them 5, and now we still owe 1.5.
You might want to
Well,
look. I
we
thought it was
haven't-
1.5 altogether.
We haven't given them 5 yet. We're waiting for their
Yep.
paperwork.
Yep.
So when they have their paperwork in place, we approved 5 in May, and then you approved 500, I think, 2 months later, and then 1 million next year. So altogether, it's going to be 2 million.
You can look it up.
let's-
Yeah, I
let's-
can
let's
definitely
verify
look
that.
it up.
I think that's the way it was.
Yep.
And then the other requests that Able had are on the bottom there, and they're actually, I put them on this sheet in kind of order of what they found to be, significant or insignificant, or, kind of in order of needs that they listed on the sheet.
So Karen, on the correctional center, the wages. So they're asking for wages on this, but what about on their budget? I mean, is it?
This is a sheet that they had sent over in request for ARPA funding. I'm pretty sure that's previous year medical and correctional officer wages.
Okay. Isn't that?
Double paying, I'm not,
That's right.
I mean, I'm just going by what they had on there.
Yep.
So that's what they had on there.
Okay.
Cause overall, I think they requested from Stark County, like, was it right around 2 million
Million something, yeah.
on top of what they're getting in levy?
So how much are we thinking? I'd like to, again, are we making some decisions on this today, or is this?
I don't
just
think we
gonna-
were gonna make these decisions until the actual final budget meeting.
Okay.
Is that okay,
Because-
Neil, or?
Yeah, because I think we need further discussion. For example, are we gonna prioritize potential funding for IT? And how does that play against some of these other requests that we have, prioritizing any of these other ones that are in here? So I'm fine with doing it that way. I just don't wanna make a quick decision here.
I don't think we're making any, as far as I know, we're not making any motions today,
Okay, thank you.
if that helps. So I'll just go through this last sheet here, which is the stuff that was levied for. So you'll see a 2022 contribution sheet, and they're in blue. It says these contributions were included in the estimated tax statement levies. So these things were actually levied for in the estimated tax statements there. And this is kind of where it gives you guys the ability, if there's some things that maybe you don't want to do, or you see another way to pay for it or anything like that, this is kind of some of the ways that you can bring that levy down.
Okay.
Currently, I know that we are, I did levy for the Belfield Billings ambulance service request of $220, but they have not come forward with a formal request for that amount. I don't know if you want to take that off of there to bring the tax levy down and wait until next year or whenever they actually request for that. I just didn't want to not include something and then you decide to do something. The other ones are kind of basic ones that we do pretty frequently every year. The Sunrise Youth Bureau for $203,860. That was included in the jail levy. I kind of wonder if I levied for that in two places now that I look at it.
And as long as you're checking that. Check Best Friends as well?
Best
was-
Friends has two different places.
Got it. So it's a one-time application for the 15, but the continuous number is the 10.
The 15 is what I levied for. The 10 is for their
I'm sorry.
for their
vice versa.
event.
Vice versa.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I figured we could cover that out of something else than levying for that. I also something to also consider is in the levies, because Stark County is kind of grouped together, as you noticed on your tax statements. Things that are milled all on the county, and some that exclude Dickinson, some that include different things. And one thing that did go up was the job development. They went from 1 to 2.47 mils, and we can maybe as a compromise, and to bring the levy down a little bit, you could reduce that to maybe 2 mils instead of the 2.47. That's another way you could cut things for the JDA,
Yeah, job development.
job development.
Okay, and they were at what? I don't see here, but okay, they were at what?
They were at 1, and then they went to 2.47.
Where are you at, Karen, on that?
It was a sheet that I had sent out, the tax dollar comparison sheet.
Oh, okay.
Let me grab one of those for you guys.
Yeah.
What's,
I have it somewhere.
oh, okay. So why are they going up so much?
Thank you.
I can answer that question. So historically, they had levied anywheres up to 4 mils. And when they ended up having success with a lot of their projects, they ended up having a reserve. And so they've come to us, and I think and again, pull it from history, they've been asking us for 1 mil actually we funded 1 mil for a number of years. Currently, and I have all the numbers of their successes and what it actually does generate tax revenue. for the projects that are out there in additional buildings and those kind of things. And they are currently negative, but based on, because if they do a project, commit to a long-term mortgage with a applicant, you know, they pay that subsidy buy down on the interest through the Bank of North Dakota over years. And so they are currently negative, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about $700,000 a year, and they're eating away at their reserves. And so there's some projects on the table that also could potentially come to play, but the fact of the matter is, you know, it's our process. We've been low at the 1 mil level for a number of years, and so they're coming in trying to look ahead to the future so that they don't continually go into the red.
So they must not get any money from the city.
Yes, they do. They do.
Yeah, they do get money from the city too.
Okay.
They get quite a significant amount from the city.
Are they asking for the city more this year too?
I think the city gives them quite a bit more than we do already.
That's not, I said, since they're coming.
Oh,
to
you
us
mean
for
on
money,
top?
Are they coming to the city for more money on top of what the city's giving them
Yes.
now?
Yes, and I don't know when the city's dates are for finalizing their budget, so I don't know that they've made a decision on a final allocation.
How
And-
many mills did you say they can get?
They can get up to 4.
They can get up to 4, and I want to say the city might even be maxed out on their mills for the JDA, so they might not be able to get more from the
The
city.
city
but I can look.
typically gives them a flat number versus a milled number.
Because didn't it seem like about 600,000 or something? I'd have to look back at the
They-
sheet.
Well, if they maxed out at 4, then our mill wouldn't be the 199. Our mill would have to be the 78, right?
Okay, so then they don't mill for them; they just give them a flat amount.
Okay.
Sorry about
Yes.
that.
Okay.
Give you a little history on that if you want it.
Sure. I guess that's not my call.
That all started when
Isn't that how it works?
Bob Zant, the thing with JDA and so forth all started years ago when the city first became a home rule city. There was a lot of opposition to that move. And so they proposed an offer that bought off the opposition by funding JDA. At that time, it was 4 mills, and they agreed to pay for JDA in exchange for not getting opposed on their home rule effort. And that's slowly starting to get reneged on.
And so they're coming to the county now.
Yeah, that's not totally accurate, because when all the
Neil, do you want to speak in?
oh, I'm sorry. I remember on the home rule discussion when the city went through all this, and part of it was economic development along with sales tax for debt reduction and those kind of things. And so when they started, the reason they wanted to do it was that a lot of the projects that were being funded were actually in the county. So the West Industrial Park, the East Industrial Park, those were all county projects. And so they did enter, and you were part of the JDA back then, they did enter into an agreement where they've reached a balance. I don't think that there's been a quote-unquote renege on that. I think it's just kind of transformed over the years. And quite honestly, it's been a very, very successful program. No one can argue.
I think it's just grown a lot, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you see the projects that come in front of it. Dean has sat on that board, and I currently sit on there, and you look at the fundings that they're spending these projects on, and it can't be labeled anything other than a success. And so, yeah, and they did back off to the 1 million. The previous county commission went said, you know, hey, you have surplus and those kind of things, so we're going to take you to the 1 mil. But now we're seeing that in the red, and the projection out there in the not too distant future is that the reserve that they have will be eaten up unless we do something. So
Well, in the early years of the home rule charter, they did pay all of it like they said they were going to.
Mm-hmm.
And no, they're not.
But was that before they started expanding some of those businesses into just the county and not the city?
well, no, I mean, originally there was county projects out there,
Oh, there
and
was.
I think the first one out west comes to mind is Baker Boy, you know, and so and Baker Boys use that, I can't, how many times they're on that list as receiving funding and projects. And so, like I said, it benefits the entire county. I do have the list, I don't have the file with me, of the projects and the projects that those facilities generate in tax dollars to the county, tax dollars to the city, and also for the schools, so,
Like I said, that's just how it got started.
yep,
It was with the city.
yep.
Right.
And I can send all the commissioners the projects list so they can kind of see what businesses are on there, if you want to see that. So that was one thing that was a significant change on the mills, from 1 to 2.47. The other thing that had to come back on was vector control, which is mosquitoes. They did eat through all of their reserve funding, so they are back on now our mill, and I went with their budget request of 130,000, and that put them at 0.64 mils, so that also increased the county overall mill.
Anything else? If not, then any other comments or discussion or questions?
The vector control put them at what? The
They went
mill?
from 0 to 0.64.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alan, I forgot something. If we can go back to Al's budget.
Too late.
Bobby's not gonna like you, Dean.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you're talking about.
What'd you have?
Well, we forgot about Bobby. She's actually slated to make less than a regular deputy, and Al and I had visited, and we'd not only like to correct that, but we'd like to see her at a corporal wage. She's in a specialty position. She is in a specialty position that no one else wants to do. She does a hell of a job with that position. And on top of that, she's just a phenomenal employee. And Al and I both think she's fantastic.
And I will say on the loss of revenue calculations, the revenue that was brought in from that portion, from 2019 to 2020 increased about $200,000. So she's apparently doing her job.
Correct. So
So,
instead of that 67, 636, if we could see her at 75 or 7,500, that would be great.
you want her, I'm sorry, you want her where?
At the corporal wage, the 70,500.
Okay.
She got about 185.
I'm not seeing something right here, Corey, that I thought corporals were higher than that.
Nope.
Proposed? You're
I-
proposed?
I believe their proposed is 70,500.
You probably better take a second look at that.
What do you have?
73.
That's a sergeant.
Was that the one that's changing over, maybe? Let me,
That's the corporal's going to sergeant, Dean.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
okay.
Two of us made mistakes today.
I'm next.
No, I'm sure I'll do another 3.
Okay. Was there any other questions about some of the other things?
Any other questions? If not, then I'm gonna open up the public hearing.
How about a break?
Yeah, like a bathroom.
Yeah, like a 10-minute break,
Jeez, I want everything.
please.
Okay,
Chairman.
10-minute break.
Thank you.
Enter the number you wish to connect to, followed by the pound key. Please hold while I try to connect you. Waiting for the conference host to join. Welcome to the conference.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, we're back in session then, and I'll open up the public hearing then. Anybody from the public have any comment? Anybody from the public have any comment?
Commissioner Franchuk,
Yes.
Commissioners, my name is Leslie Ross. And I'm coming to before you today to talk about some of the things that have been discussed on preliminary budget. And first thing I want to bring up is, so I have a question about the budget for the commissioners. And my question is this: you've established a certain amount of pay, and you're all expected to be equal. My question to you is, why is the amount of responsibilities and the actual work produced different between all of you? It seems that some of you have some very intense portfolios that require an exorbitant amount of time, and some of you don't have any, and some of you are combined on several portfolios together. And the number of portfolios is drastically different between all of you. So my question is, why should we, as taxpayers, approve the budget when some of you are doing a lot of work and others maybe not? And I'm not saying, or whatever, that's not happening. But it's really discouraging to look at your portfolio lists and find that somebody's got 12, 9, 10, whatever, and somebody has only a couple. And of those couple, maybe those don't have much meetings. Now, also correct me if I'm wrong, do you get paid a wage or a stipend from some of these other boards that you're on? Commissioner Franchuk?
The only thing that I think the city reimburses so much for the meetings, right?
But things like the planning and zoning, the commissioners don't get extra amounts for that, only the members that are not commissioners.
Correct. Well, I would really encourage you to spread the wealth a little bit. It seems like a person should be earning every bit of that taxpayer money for doing that job that we, the voters, put them in that place to do. And, you know, that's just my thoughts and encouragement for that. It just seems disparaging that some are doing a whole lot more by utilizing their own time as well. We know that you're not here because of the pay, because nobody would work for that. However, it's something to be considerate of. The next thing I want to talk about is you were provided some information on the services by the Veteran Service Office for other counties. Now, like Mr. Zent gave you some history, I would like to give you some history on those JPAs. When I started the JPAs with other counties, it started with Billings. And with Commissioner at the time, Commissioner Wolf, and we met specifically with Billings County. And of course, then we met with Dunn County. Now, the reason that came about is because, one, Billings County all of a sudden lost their veteran service officer. He was 78 years old and decided he'd had enough. And in Dunn County, it was Melvin Cattermas, and he also left the position abruptly. And so in order to help them at that time, we decided as a group and through the board at that time that we would go out and offer those services pending what was to be regionalization by the North Dakota Department of Veterans Affairs. They were going to have regions to make sure and try to bring in county veteran service officers and make them not county veteran service officers, but state service officers, and place them in regions to accompany those areas. And so it wasn't intended to be long-term. It wasn't intended to be forever. And it certainly wasn't intended to be at the same rate of pay for the entire time. Now that was 2011, 2012. So what has happened is those JPAs specifically state that those counties can levy and should levy up to 2 mills to pay for their county veteran service officer. Now, did we settle on 2 mills from those counties at that time? Of course not. We made it, as Ms. Clifton had said, affordable for them to have that service provided. And at that time, the Dunn County, or the Billings County Veteran Service Officer lived in Dickinson. So that made no sense, but it was the way it was. But in the same token, and Ms. Clifton talked about being fair and equitable to allow those, and that's absolutely right. You want to do that. You want to make sure that that happens. However, at the same token, the Billings County, I'm just going to give you some, in the same token, the amount of veterans has decreased over time substantially. And why, and then you'd have to look at fair and equitable. Billings County has 67 veterans. 67. They have decreased exponentially over the last 5 years, actually over the last 7 years. And now they have 67 veterans. Okay? Grant County has 181 veterans. But Grand County pays Stark County $10,000. And Billings County is paying Stark County $13,000. Please explain that to me. Well, I can't explain it. And Hettinger County, all of these counties, even Stark County, has decreased their veteran population over the last 5 years. Stark County showed one increase, which was 2020, of about 256 veterans, all right? And but it's still down overall from when I kept statistics from 2014. So there's only 2,055 veterans, according to the Veterans Administration in Stark County. So they're overall down 48. Hettinger's down 106 veterans. Billings County, I said, is down 37 veterans to 67. And even then, Dunn County, where you think there would have been growth, still had a reduction of down 45 veterans. And Grant County just lost 55 veterans. And why this is important is we did not go, and there was no expectation, and there never, ever been compensation for providing that service to those counties. And there was no compensation when I sat in that job and had more veterans in all of those counties. There was no compensation for that. And is that the neighbor that we want to be? I mean, we offered these services. And by the way, I would bring you to also the amount and the price per veteran of what it is costing each county to provide a contracted veteran service officer. You know, in Stark County, you're not even levying mills in Stark County. But in these other counties, I don't know what their mill levy is for their Stark County Veteran Service Officer to provide that service. Don't know. I can tell you that the budget for each county has to have a budget prepared for them. And I would question, why hasn't that changed? over the last 6 years. Why hasn't it changed? Because there's the line items in each of those budgets where there's travel pay for reimbursement, where there's all of that. Somewhere in and we'll get to travel for a minute. It's travel pay stopped being charged back to those counties in 2016. Why? You're traveling, you're providing a service for their county, it's on the budget that you submit to each county. Why isn't it being charged? Why as a Stark County taxpayer would I pay for you to provide service somewhere else? That is part of their budget. Now, the other issue about wages that I'm going to bring your attention to is, do you know, have you been informed how this wage of the Stark County Veteran Service Officer has changed over these years? Easy to figure out, just look at the budgets. Since 2015, the Stark County Veteran Service Officer's salary has increased 27%.
Since when?
2015. And that has nothing to do with being a department head. That's just as the department head. If you incorporate that's her previous salary, it's 48.36% increase. Now, I don't know about you, but in the private sector, wow, that is indefensible. So then I'd ask, how did that happen? Why did that happen? And you have brought up a good point here, board. You've asked the question. Truthfully, does salary follow the position, and should it? You made an excellent point, Ms. Richards, that you came to the party with a set of experience and education and those sorts of things. So I would have no problems with your salary. However, what I do have a problem with is the assumption that goes on that that wage follows that position. Just because you get that position, somebody was in that position before you and had a whole bunch of years and experience behind them. So you don't get to get that. You should not be awarding the fact that you got this job in this position because of it just happened to be a placeholder. And the Veteran Service Officer is demonstrated by hiring a deputy in the past that they did not get the salary of that deputy service officer from the last person. It was offered at a lower wage. Why? Zero experience. We're trying to give raises to individuals without proof of performance and productivity. So basically what you're telling your top performers is they're only worth $1, but your lowest performer also gets $1. So how long do you think that person is going to feel appreciated for their diligent work if you're giving the lowest common denominator $1 without any evidence of performance and the level of that performance? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, the Stark County do performance appraisals? No. The answer is no. So how do you know? How do you know if somebody is truly performing? You don't. So this is not a negative about Stark County Veteran Service Office and the services they provide. That would be counterintuitive because I know the services that they provide. But what you fail to have been presented is a history and the reasons of why. Not just, I do this, so I should be compensated. Well, what is it that you do? I would like to know. And second, there is some comments that were made that are pretty much incorrect. And I just wanted to highlight those a little bit because I think it leads you to misunderstand the actual foundation. The joint powers and agreement, the only joint powers agreement that was entered into by the Stark County Veteran Service Officer currently is Grant County. The other ones were already in place. And then I'd ask, why? Again, it didn't come before this board. It wasn't discussed anywhere. And that JPA was signed after the other two came before the board. Here, we're going to provide these services, and then that JPA was signed. Probably, unbeknownst to the person signing them, that this was a new JPA. And what are we getting? Who was in on the negotiations? No, nobody. So again, go back to, it is not Stark County's responsibility to make grant billings and heading her whole when it comes to a county veteran service officer. It is already provided for in Century Code that they must appoint or contract for services. And they have statutory 2 mills to levy to make that happen. And going to these counties on nights and weekends, and I would caveat, you brought up a good point, Commissioner Arthod, is in private business, if you took your POV and you went out and you got in an accident, and you were doing county work, that liability comes back to Stark County. And I believe one time I was brought into an office with Commissioner Zander, Commissioner Hoff, the state's attorney, and Auditor Haig to tell me just that. You must request travel pay. You must be on the clock. You cannot do it on your own time. So I'm pretty sure that same rule probably should be applying at this point. So those travel pay monies should be coming out of the other counties' funds, not Stark County. Another issue is, she talked a little bit about hiring and outreach specialists and part-time. Well, the North Dakota National Guard has outreach specialists. They actually have a job. They handle this area and they forwarded people to Stark County. And so that's really not a non-issue. You have that. If you don't have enough, on one hand, you're asking for a raise, and then in the same token, you say you don't have enough work. I don't know if you caught that. I caught that. Don't have enough work for a part-time person, but we're going to add more counties. Doesn't make sense. She said the federal government requires that paperwork and the claims process, the claims need to be done by the end of the month. Well, that would lead you to believe that, oh my God, she has end-of-month responsibilities. That is completely untrue. What she should have said, and I'm sure she probably meant to say, was that in order to save an effective date, and it's very important on claims, is that needs to be put in before the end of the month to hold that whole month as an effective date. But she doesn't have to do it. An intent to file, veteran, spouse, call on the phone, 1-800 number. That's the intent to file. Takes 2 seconds. You got a year to work on the claim after that. So that doesn't take any time. Veteran has 4 ways to actually file a claim. And the biggest thing I want to point out is when you have 3,600 registered veterans, what does that mean? Do you think, are you under the assumption that she's working with 3,600 people? What does that mean?
It's 3,600 veterans registered in that area.
Well, I would say that and probably a little more. Somebody came in once for a DD 214. They were plugged in a case management software, and you have 3,600 people in the case management software. What you really need to be asking are better questions. How many active claims do you have currently? How many claims have you submitted in 2020, 21? For what counties? How many? What is the return on that investment? What are the awards? All these are reports that can be generated by case management software and should be provided to you in order for you to make a decision on productivity. You know, I want Stark County Veteran Service Office to grow, as any veterans advocate would. But you need to be concerned more about the actual amount of money and what you're saying to your lowest common denominator worker and your high performers, because I don't see it. And I would think that this would be one of those issues. But, you know, do you have any questions?
So why did the regional thing fall up and that never happened?
Well, that's
Or the state?
Yeah, the state of North Dakota, the North Dakota Department of Veterans Affairs, has absolutely no power or control over any county veteran service officer. There is no statutory, there's no power, period. And it was said that, you know, the department controls how these part-time veteran service officers are paid or their salaries. That's not true at all. County commissioners decide that, what they're willing to pay.
But if it would have become a state position, is it, you said they were looking at making it a state position?
Right. What was happening at the time, and I was a veterans advocate lobbyist, what's happening at the time is that the Department of Veterans Affairs came before legislature and asked and was trying to persuade a bill on moving to regionalization. And the reason that came about is because at that point in time, too many veteran service officers in all 53 counties were uneducated, had no standards, had no training. It was abysmal. So a veteran who comes to Stark County or a veteran who comes to Mercer County should have the same level of expertise and knowledge from that county veteran service officer. That didn't happen. And so the state was trying to move in that direction. And regionalization was the word. And at that point, at that time, Stark County was the only county that had two other counties. Morton and Oliver have always been together, and some other counties, Ramsey, Nelson, and I don't know what the third county is, but they came along afterwards. But what's important to note is that that fell through. Why? Because counties didn't want to give up control to the state. They wanted local control. And also, a lobbying group managed to pass and put into law the need for a quality education from specific entities. And so now it is written in Century Code that you, in order to be accredited, you have to meet these specific, education requirements and continue to have your CEUs. So that eliminated a lot of that, and more and more county veteran service officers in these rural areas that truly maybe only work 2 hours a week, if that, could be fully trained. I doubt that really is the case. I benefit from the fact that they do a poor job in my job. And I can't say that about Stark County, but I do know that a county veteran service officer is not a county veteran service officer in all of these counties. And answering questions for another county when they have a service officer, I find that heroic and coming out of, because that's what I would do too. The veteran needs help, I'm going to give it. There was a time when we had mass quantities of county, veterans moving to the state, that we had to, and we put in a limitation that said, we will not assist you in Stark County or any of the counties we were county veteran service unless you could provide us residency. You needed to have a North Dakota driver's license because we were inundated. And these claims come from every state in the nation and some overseas. So what happens is you don't get credit for your work because the VA tracks how much those awards for those claims come back to each county. Well, if you're home of record and you get your paycheck when an award comes to another state, it shows up on their rolls. But conversely, the same is true in Stark County. If some other entity, like myself, works a claim, defends it in Washington, and they get a retro payment, it shows up under Stark County if that person lives in Stark County. So that's a crude measurement, but it's the only one the VA has to do that. So, do you have any other questions?
You said something, what did you say, something about the National Guard? With that, what is that?
The North Dakota National Guard has program military outreach specialists. They're hired, they're full-time employees. I think in this area it's Nikki, I think it's Nikki Freilich, I believe, in this area. But they hire to do that. They understand, the Guard has understood that, and they just don't help guardsmen. They help any veteran on that way and get them to the resources. They're there to point them toward the resources and to get it. So.
I just like. Yeah.
So
if there's somebody in a county that doesn't have it or needs something, they can reach out to them too?
Oh, yeah. That's Military One Source. I mean, those numbers and those contact information are widespread.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
So the number of veterans in each county is declining, but the populations of these counties are probably declining too. So I mean, that's probably one thing, and your Korean War, your World War II, even your Vietnam vets are slowly passing away, so.
1,500 Vietnam veterans a day.
Well,
Yeah. Is the
I mean, we're gonna have
statistic.
more new veterans coming up from all these other.
Absolutely. Yes. And you should, pay attention to that too, of course, but historically and statistically right now, a majority of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan are receiving their benefit. That is the smartest part of that generation of the 20-year war, is that they had those services provided them the minute they got off the plane, so, I mean, granted, that's not everybody. And interesting statistic is only 38% of all veterans access their benefits in their lifetime.
Really?
So you need to take that whole of 53,000 veterans and say only 38% of those that are in the population state of North Dakota access their veterans in their lifetime. And that's awful. So
Yes.
it is. Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate it.
Anybody else have any comment?
But that took so long, the person I want to ask the question has left the room. Came back. I only have two questions. One relative to the weed board. Do you know, are they working exclusively in the county or are they doing some spraying within the city? Because in the past they had been.
We're no longer spraying the city. The city is separate. The city has their own weed now.
Okay, so none of this is going into any of the cities, they've got their own.
They just started that this year. The city the county did it up to, I think it was 3 years ago where the county quit getting the 50,000 and doing it. And then kind of went to the wayside with the city. And then now the city.
Now they're doing it on their own?
Yep.
Okay, I was just curious on that. And then just, excuse me, the other thing, and Heiser kind of addressed it, I just want it to be made more clear if it could be. With the 10 mil levy, that was pretty much dedicated to replacing bridges and improving roads that wouldn't otherwise. So with this getting moved the way you did move it, what's the plan?
It's not really moved, it's just that we've combined the special road and bridge into that, it's changed according to legislation, and what I understand in 2024, that has to go back to a vote of the people to continue the 10 mil.
It does not.
It does not?
So what it is you are able to mill up to 10 mills in that, we renamed it the County Road and Bridge. We're kind of correcting the names to match what they're actually supposed to be. Let me go to that one real quick and I'll tell you.
Well, anyway, I was involved with that when I was on, and that was really the only way that the county had to go after all of these deficient bridges, plus improving some of the roads that needed improving.
So basically what happened is that 10 mil, that was part of that 10 mil levy, got combined with and into the county road and bridge, which was at 1.5 mils out of 10. We were using 1.5 out of 10 available without going to a vote. We can do 11.5, like I said, the 1.5 over the 10 until the end of 2024. And then if our tax basis isn't high enough to get it where it needs to be, then we would have to put up that 1.5 mil for a vote, not a 10 mil. So it just shifted, basically. They just combined some of the funding.
So do you still,
I really still think, Karen, that there's some sunset clause in 2024 with the 10 mil. We discussed it at the county meeting the other day, and I think it's got to go to legislation. I'm not totally sure, but there is something that happens in 24.
I know the 1.5 over the 10. So basically we had two funds. We had the 10 mil and then we had the special road and bridge.
Special road and bridge was levied 1.5 and the 10 mil was 10 mil.
So we had special road and bridge at 1.5. We had 10 mil at 10. And we basically combined them. And it's now called County Road and Bridge. And it's levied for at 11.5 until the end of 2024. And then it has to go back down to that 10, not 11.5. And that 1.5 mil has to come from somewhere else.
oh boy, it's been a long time ago, but I thought that like this special was kind of to make up for the townships that had been disbanded. That was the county's way of providing for what the townships had been doing. The 10 mil was special from the get-go. And I tend to agree with Mr. Heiser, that 10 mil had built-in sunsets. It needed to be revoted periodically. Every 10 years, I think, it needs to be revoted on. That was a special authority.
Legislation just, basically we were told that we had to get it off by the end of 2024 and combine it with something else. The other suggestion they had for the road was to use the capital projects fund that you have. But as of right now, Stark County uses the entire 10 mills available from the capital projects to fund the jail.
Okay, well, anyway, we need to hang on to that for the bridges. We're not done fixing bridges yet. And of course, that was just my concern, that be really careful that you don't lose that.
I think the next session coming up, I think there's gonna be lots of, they're working on to keep things flowing, and I'm not quite sure the whole issue, but I know there's something that sunsets then, so. Association of Counties is on top of it. We discussed it briefly here a couple weeks ago.
But until the end of 2024, we haven't lost any actual dollars for the road. They're still getting the same amount.
Does it still function the same way where you had to prepare your list every year or so?
That kind of went away. We can use it, it doesn't have to be, it had to be a specified 10 mil project. We can use it on, even if it's not a 10 mil project, we can use it openly for any bridge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment from the public? Anybody on the phone have a comment?
I know I unmuted it, so.
Okay. Any other comment? And just address a couple things that Ms. Ross put up. I know that I'm on the personnel and we're on the department head and the elected officials committee. We're working on our performance type thing, performance evaluation type thing that we're working on too. So moving forward with that. So, and also the portfolio part of it. Most of these people volunteered for that headaches, I have to say. So I guess we kind of discussed that one at the first of the year. So I guess that's why the kind of lopsided. There's some of them wanted those. Or unless I'm wrong on that, but I think some of them volunteered for their headaches. So
Just didn't know IT was gonna blow up into pieces.
yeah.
So when they
Okay.
do these performance evaluations, are they gonna do on the employees, or the employees gonna do evaluations on the department heads too?
They're working on both that, and we're discussing that and be brought forward when they get it finalized and stuff. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'm gonna close the public hearing then. And then, is there any other discussion or comments or from anybody?
What's our next step here then?
Next step is our meeting in October 7th. We'll have to,
So, Neil, if you had any questions about some of the contributions or anything like that, now is kind of the time to start bringing up some of those questions because it'll have to be approved in the October.
Okay, so my first one is that the notice that went out, and I had a whole packet and I didn't bring it in because of planning and zoning this morning, thanks Dean, but
I need to have anything to do with that, or you leaving something behind.
so, anyway, my concern is that we're levying more dollars, actual revenue dollars from property tax than we did, at least by notice, than we did 12 months ago. It would be my goal to take that to some zero, okay? And you and I have talked about this, where we have to come up with 460,000 or whatever the number is. I have so many numbers in my head. And so that's my goal, is to get there, if we can get there. I know I'm just one of five, but that's where I would like to get us there. I have, going through the things this morning, I have 13 or 14 comments that if we could, how do we do there? Is it achievable? Is it a goal mutually amongst all of us as commissioners, or do we run with
I think where you guys will want to look on your sheets, these ones that I sent out that had the tax comparison on it, where it says county milled on all statements, and you see an increased overall mill because it includes all the ones above it of 3.02. So that can tell you right there that in order to get the mills down to where they were on last year's tax statements, you need to lower the mill by 3.02 is you need to cut somewhere. So 3.02 mills for the county would be right around, let's see, 203,860 times 3. So 609, 10, about 611,000 total is what you would need to cut down total wise to be at exactly at that same 62.44. So some of those suggestions that I made, things that weren't yet requested for, that were milled for, you're really going to have to look on those sheets that were levied for, those requests, and that's kind of going to be where you guys can start taking from to get that down. I did already account for about 57,000 of that. So you're more looking at the 560 as kind of your number of, and then we can also take 40,000 off of the one line item for county park. So you're looking at about 520 is your number of where you need to bring down.
Yeah, so do we do that today, or do we just all of a sudden try to figure it out at the last
No,
minute?
I think if you have questions or discussions about some of these items, it's kind of today, because we're not going to have another meeting between now and.
Right, okay. Well, and I think, while we've mentioned even more things than that, we talked about potentially moving some of these expenditures into the once the ARPA, right, ITT, for example, or ITT, IT as one of them, the weeds as one of them,
We already moved the weed.
The sheriff's 3 vehicles, I think, is that?
That's already been accounted for.
Already been accounted for?
Yep.
Okay.
So you're at about 520, okay? And, so let's say, so one of the biggest ones that we could move out of is that Belfield Billings Ambulance Service, because they have not come to us with a dollar amount, and we can address that when it comes forward. And that's 220,000 right there. The other thing that I suggested was if you wanted to put the JDA at 2 instead of 2.47, that would be almost, will be 0.47 of a mil, so that'd be almost 100,000 right there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point is do we have any opinions on if we try to get to levying the same dollars? Now, if we're gonna spend more, then we need to potentially take it out of reserves that we have. I just don't see it's very palatable to raise property tax assessments in this environment.
Now, there's a difference between levying the same dollars and levying the same levies.
I understand that.
So-
Most people in the room are gonna understand dollars, not mills, because they don't care how many mills you play with. It's my property tax bill went up. So that's where I'm looking at. If it's 500,000, let's figure out how to get there.
That's to get the mills down to the same as last year. If you wanted to get the dollar amount down as the same last year, you're gonna have to go by that 904,000.
Okay, then that's what it is. I mean, I'm just saying that's my personal goal. I'm 1 of 5, but I just don't see having a lot of. I've had a tremendous amount of calls because the notice that went out at the end of August all showed the county increasing your property tax or milling or levying more dollars, assessing more dollars to your property, and so.
So if you wanted to bring the mill number down, the mill levy down to what it was last year, that's where that 500 and something comes from. That would affect everybody that has this no changes in value to their property. So if you wanted to bring the dollar amount down, so the people that even had increases in their property value, then that's when you would have to do the 900 and something thousand, and then you're going to decrease the mills.
Right. Well, I'd be interested in other opinions. To me, it's dollars. To me, it's not mills. That's the primary focus, because most people, unless you're in that arena, don't understand mills or don't follow mills or don't care about mills. They care about dollars, and so that's kind of where I'm, again, 1 of 5, but that's kind of my
I would
goal.
much rather take it out of reserve than up property taxes a penny.
Now, the only thing is that with the ARPA funding, okay, you cannot use ARPA funding to offset tax dollars. So with that being said, if you decrease your tax dollars, you cannot, you have to show that in your reporting, and that would disqualify some of that ARPA funding. So for example, if, let's say you used ARPA funding, let's say we just decided to use ARPA funding to fund the weed department for the year. So that's 400,000. So you increased your taxable dollars by 400,000, and used ARPA funding instead. That is a big no.
That's not allowable.
That's not allowed.
But if you
Yep.
if you keep your assessed dollars
As it was.
the same,
You need to
Not-
keep your mills the same. That's not decreasing you could like keep your mills the same and not increase your mills, but it's the mills that they're concerned about, I think, moving up and down.
okay, I'd want clarification on that, but let's just figure that out. But I mean, you gave us a whole bunch of examples today. I wrote them down that we have potential of doing that.
But those ones weren't milled for yet anyways. Most of those.
Okay, I just asked IT for 300,000. That was milled in their IT budget.
For the 200 and
52,000.
yeah, that one was milled for, but I'm saying the extra requests that are on there that are additional budget items on the bottom of the sheet, that would have been on that sheet that said it was not milled for. Those are not included in that total mill. So
We
the,
shouldn't have to mill anything for the IT because we have the extra COVID money.
That's right.
So why were we milling anything for IT this year? Just use we'll use our COVID funding.
because we can't use the COVID funding to decrease,
The first stuff we can.
but you're going to show that in your next year's. So for example, if we use the COVID funding, even though it's from last year, to decrease the funding for the IT, right? It's gonna show in the overall that you decreased your tax basis in lieu of COVID funding. And that's where that's like their number one reporting thing, is that you cannot use it to offset taxes. That's what it said. And I can show you that in the actual.
On the
Yeah.
first stuff, I didn't think there was any kind of,
Yeah, but it's going to offset for the reporting for the next stuff. That's what I'm saying. So like if you use that 2020, let's say that 2020 COVID funding, right, to decrease your taxes for 2022 budget, it's going to show in that paperwork for 2022, not in as being used in 2020. You know what I'm saying? When
So
I do the
what's
reporting.
the baseline year, 2020 or 2021 for the ARPA funds?
For the ARPA funds?
Yes.
Right now, 2020 is the base year for loss of revenue. But it's the year that you're reporting it in when you spend the dollar amounts. So like 2021 ARPA funding, when I do the report, which the first report was due here, they have to go by those months that you've had that funding. So they do it in quarterly sections depending on how much money you got. So it's that quarter time frame.
Okay, because that was kind of the, well, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, that was kind of the basis for my question, because 2020 under IT is just for round number 70,000, right? We're proposing that 2021 was 248 and 2022 is going to be 252. So my point is, why can't we use the 180 difference there through ARPA rather than what we're talking about? And you're telling me we can't do that.
You can for the computers and stuff like that because when you started in 2020, you only had 60 something thousand. And then in this budget, you're looking at increasing it 200 and something,
Right.
correct?
Right.
So you could use it to make up the difference. You just can't put it to zero is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you don't want it to be less than the
But that's
than the
okay.
previous
We
year.
were-
That's my
So
point.
just leave it at 70 and then use COVID.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm mistaken you. I thought you wanted to take all of the IT and take it out of ARPA.
Right. No.
Oh, okay.
So would that help us 200 and
Oh,
X
yes.
amount of dollars? Okay.
That would
Bingo.
that'd be 200,000 right there.
Okay, we're 25% there.
And with our reserve, can't we use any of our reserve money?
Your reserve or your special projects money, because you have money in the reserve that stays there for the amount of funding you get every year. That's your appropriations, your 75% of appropriations. So that money you don't really spend. I think you're thinking of the money that's in the special projects money. And that's where I had the fairgrounds, some of their stuff coming out of. Those you have to have specific projects for that money to be used. I was going to check to see if we're allowed to transfer that money into the general fund and use it for other purposes than specific projects. But I think once it's put under that special projects, it's supposed to be those bigger dollar ticket items like the pedestals or, specific projects type situation.
Like our reserve money that we put into CDs
Savings.
and savings. That's what the reserve I'm talking about. So we do not increase property taxes.
Yep, those reserves though are for if you're not supposed to be spending your actual 75% appropriation reserves. You're supposed to keep that. That's supposed to be the county's actual reserves. If next year something happened and you lost a bunch of tax
That's not
revenue.
century code though.
For the reserve portion,
yeah,
for the
is that-
75%, yeah, you keep the 75%. We're not levying anymore for 75% of appropriations.
Okay.
In the past, if you were not at that 75%, so let's say you had, when they were working with a lot smaller budgets, okay, and they had a lot less revenue, and let's say they needed $50,000, they were 50,000 over budget. So that would come out of that reserve, and then the next year they would levy for that reserve. But we're not levying for the reserve at all. I don't know if that
Yeah.
kind of answers that question.
Well, the budgets we went over today, and I realize we're kind of locked in by century code and statute, but we have a lot of conflicts in there in regarding capital improvements projects. For example, I've been in the private sector, when we manage properties, we have a reserve fund for roofs, HVACs, all these kind of things. And it would be great as a county if we could do that. I mean,
We do have a capital improvements fund.
we have a capital improvements fund, but it's not dedicated. So if, for example, we know our roofs coming to the end, we have an HVAC challenge that's in front of us. It would be nice if we knew that we put X amount of dollars a year into a fund, and I don't want to use the word reserve or anything, so that when those things come out, we don't have this big fluctuation in spending on assets.
It's not dedicated, but a lot of the oil and stuff revenue goes in there. And so that fund, like for example, sits at around $3 million.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
If that.
it does, but it's not the way.
I don't think we can have I know what you're saying, Neil. It's just that we can't have other than the 75% of appropriations, we can't have a savings account for the county. They don't allow us to have any more than that 75%, other than what we have transferred over to that special projects fund or anything like that, which honestly, if there was something like that, we could take it out of the special projects fund.
Right. But that special projects is kind of all encompassing, because it would be the same thing you're talking about, whether we had a weather emergency or whatever in this community. If we had to pull a special, a one-time appropriation, that's probably the fund we'd go looking into.
Well, we have a special projects fund and we have a capital improvements fund.
Yeah, okay.
And those are separated, I guess. I mean, we just can only, the way I understood it is we just can't have we can't have a rainy day fund type situation. We can have an emergency fund.
Well, and I'm for our buildings, our assets, I'm not talking about a rainy day fund. I'm talking about something that if it's a $500,000 roof, that we spend it $50,000 or $20,000 a year for 15 years, so that instead of going like this and then all of a sudden 500,000, then we come down like this, because that doesn't reflect, because some other department's going to suffer if we want to balance our budget every year.
That would be that would come out of the capital improvements fund, the money that goes into there for that kind of stuff.
Any other discussion?
I have 30 seconds?
Yes.
Watch the clock. 30 seconds. Bob Sinnott, I want to commend you for the effort on trying to, take care of the tax levy increase. I think it would be very just if you could just do the levies equal. And because if your property value went up, yeah, you should pay more.
But they didn't. We zeroed it out this year.
Well, it doesn't come out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's where you're gonna have increased values.
That's where I say you have to go more by the levy, which is the 520,000.
Rather than shooting for the 900,000,
Yes.
shoot on getting the levy down. That end number will still go up a little bit because some values
But
did
you'd be happy
increase.
if we got the 500 rather than 900.
Pardon?
You'd be happy if we got the 500 rather than.
I'd be
900.
happy if the levy mill stayed at 6.244 instead of 65.46.
Okay, all right.
That's fair.
Should step up to the podium. Natalie, can you step up here?
I agree with Bob. Natalie Wandler, Stark County Tax Director. If your value goes up, say you add a garage or a shop, or you don't want your tax dollars, if your tax dollars are the same, they're gonna be like, holy cow, Stark County really took their mills down to get my stuff to be exact. Plus, it would look a little fishy, I would think, because if you have a totally different value, say you add $200,000 and your mills, you know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So I agree that as long as we get the mills down, everybody's value that stayed the same, their tax statement's gonna be the same.
And that's where I was at with the
Yep.
dollars versus the mills,
Yep.
as we get the mills down to what they were last year, and that will.
Yep.
I'm getting calls where they didn't improve anything or, and their taxes are up.
Yeah, that's because.
But that's
Their
because of the
taxes,
increase
because
in
the-
mills.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, right.
So if you bring those mills down, their taxes should be the same if their value didn't go up.
Yeah, if they had a $500,000 house last year, it's still $500,000 this year. If the mill goes up, obviously the taxes are, but if the mill stays the same, it should stay the same, so. I agree with getting the mill to where it was last year, and then the people that have improvements obviously are gonna get an increase, but nobody else should.
Or new construction or
Right.
anything like that. Those are gonna be the ones that are gonna be paying that difference in dollar amount.
And they're still gonna see a difference if the school went up, but the county didn't. You know, in the tax dollars for the county, they might stay exactly the same, but if the school went up 6 mils, you know, they're still gonna see an increase, but at least that we can say the county across the board as the county stayed at that 64 point, whatever it was last year.
Okay. Any other
Thanks.
questions?
Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thanks. Any other discussion or comments? Neil, do you got any more?
I'm done.
You're done.
You seem like you're running away from us, Neil.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then I guess we look for,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second, we have a meeting at 1 o'clock.
okay.
I'll have
Okay.
another meeting at 1 o'clock. Oh, shit.
Okay, are
Okay,
we
I have a
adjourning?
motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.